Chapter 1658. Looking at the green shirt man's painful expression, Yi Xian almost couldn't help but want to beat him up. He really couldn't stand it. However, his rationality told him that he couldn't beat him. Endure. I must endure. Yi Xian took a deep breath, then leaned on the chair and stopped talking. He suddenly regretted coming to this old man. God. Watching this guy acting tough, yet he couldn't refute him. This was too frustrating. Too frustrating. He wanted to leave with Ah Ming. At this moment, the swordsman suddenly walked in front of everyone. The swordsman looked at the green shirt man and smiled. Brother, was my sword technique not strong? The green shirt man was slightly startled, then he smiled. It's all right. The swordsman's smile suddenly became a little playful. It's all right? The green shirt man smiled. It's all right. The swordsman shook his head and smiled. My unparalleled sword technique is only all right in your eyes. Interesting. Really interesting. The green shirt man smiled. What's the matter? The swordsman stared at the green shirt man. I see that you are also a swordsman. Why don't you come on stage and show your skills? The green shirt man thought about it and said, I only know how to kill. Yi Xian, the swordsman was stunned, then he laughed. Your words sound like I don't know how to kill. The green shirt man smiled. Are you looking for trouble? The swordsman smiled. No. It's just that I don't like you. Yi Xian, on the side, Arya looked at the swordsman with some pity. There were many people who didn't like Brother Yang, but the weeds on those people's graves were already 3 feet tall. Xiao Bai continued to lick the candied fruit, not caring about anything. The green shirt man turned to look at Yi Xian and smiled. Someone doesn't like your father. Don't you want to say something? Yi Xian said lightly, Can I say that I don't like you too? The blue-clothed man shook his head. You unfilial son. Yi Xian was speechless. At this time, the swordsman suddenly laughed and said, Since your excellency is also a swordsman, why don't we exchange a few moves? 2 moves. As soon as these words were spoken, the gazes of countless people shot over. A fight between swordsmen? That would be very interesting. Especially this powerful swordsman. The green-robed man shook his head. Seeing the green-robed man shake his head, the swordsman narrowed his eyes. You refuse? The azure-robed man smiled and said, No, what I mean is, there's no need for 2 moves, 1 is enough. All the spectators were stunned when they heard this. The swordsman was stunned for a moment, and then he burst out laughing. 1 move is enough? I, Nan Feng, have never seen such an arrogant person since I started cultivating the sword. What a joke, The azure-robed man was about to stand up when Yi Xian suddenly chuckled. What would you do if my father subdues you with a single move? Nan Feng gazed at Yi Xian. Little fellow, do you think that's possible? Is it? Yi Xian grinned. Why don't we make a bet? Nan Feng grinned. What kind of bet? Yi Xian spoke seriously. If my father subdues you with a single move, then you'll follow me for 3 years. If he can't, then he'll follow you for 3 years. The azure-robed man couldn't help but say, Why do I have to follow him for 3 years and not you? Yi Xian spoke seriously. You're the one fighting him, not me. The azure-robed man was about to speak when the swordsman suddenly said, I agree. He agreed. The swordsman gazed at the azure-robed man. Draw your sword. I'd like to see how you're going to subdue me with a single move. The azure-robed man glanced at Yi Xian with an enigmatic smile. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly spoke calmly. Qing has never used 2 moves against anyone. Big brother Xiaoyao has never used 2 moves against his enemies. When he spoke up to this point, he looked at the azure-robed man and feigned exaggeration. Father, don't tell me you're going to use 2 moves? It can't be, right? The azure-robed man gave a thumbs up to Yi Xian. You're amazing. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned to look at the swordsman. The swordsman smiled. Shall we go somewhere else? The azure-robed man smiled. No need. As he spoke, he suddenly drew his sword. The swordsman's expression changed drastically at the instant the azure-robed man drew his sword. However, he reacted swiftly, and a sword suddenly appeared in his hand. Just as he was about to draw his sword, a sword was already pressed against his forehead. He lost. The surroundings suddenly fell silent to the point a pin drop could be heard. A single strike. Many people in the surroundings had seen the azure-robed man attack. The azure-robed man's attack was very slow, but they couldn't figure out how the swordsman had lost. Even the swordsman himself was slightly dazed. How did I lose? The swordsman's attack was clearly very slow. Huai took a deep and long glance at the azure-robed man. The azure-robed man wasn't slow, he was too fast. She'd never seen such speed. Is this the speed of a human? Ah Ming's expression was extremely solemn because the azure-robed man's sword was truly too fast. It had surpassed the dimension of time. It had far surpassed it. The azure-robed man sheathed his sword and smiled. You've lost. As he spoke, he sat down and glanced at Yi Xian. Just you wait. Yi Xian was quite speechless. Damn it. This father of mine actually holds a grudge. I have to be careful now because this fellow might try to trick me. Meanwhile, the swordsman, Nan Feng, spoke abruptly. Why is your sword so fast? The azure-robed man replied indifferently. I don't like the look of you either. I refuse to answer. Nan Feng was speechless. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly stood up. Sir, do you remember our bet from before? Nan Feng glanced at Yi Xian. I remember. Yi Xian said seriously, are you willing to accept your loss? Nan Feng fell silent. Yi Xian smiled. I know why my father's sword is so fast. Nan Feng glanced at Yi Xian. I'll follow you for 3 years. Yi Xian smiled faintly. How awesome. I have another super fighter. Although Nan Feng isn't my father's match, how many people in this world can be my father's match? This is a half-step in 10th realm expert. Moreover, he's a swordsman. His combat strength is absolutely top-notch. Nan Feng glanced at the azure-robed man and hesitated to speak. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly smiled. Sir, if there's anything you don't understand, you can ask me. I know everything. Nan Feng glanced at Yi Xian suspiciously. Young friend, are you sure you know everything? Yi Xian nodded and said seriously, my father knows everything. If my father knows, then I know. What's wrong with that? Nan Feng was speechless. Huai and Ah Ming also looked at Yi Xian in disbelief. How could he do that? Arya glanced at Yi Xian and gave him a thumbs up. Awesome. Each is more shameless than the other. The azure-robed man was also speechless. Damn it. Why is my son so thick-skinned? At this moment, an old man suddenly appeared on the stone platform. The old man held a black cane in his hand. His hair and beard were all white, and he looked extremely old. At this moment, Huai suddenly said, Old Song. Yi Xian looked at Huai, and the latter explained, Old Song is the organizer of this Dao discussion meeting. He's very famous in our circle, and everyone will give him face. Even my endless city has to give him some face too. Moreover, he's rather mysterious, and there seems to be a mysterious force behind him. Yi Xian said with a smile, Endless City shouldn't be as simple as it seems on the surface, right? Huai shook her head and smiled. Before young master and senior, my Endless City is truly insignificant. Actually, these words weren't modest, but they came from the bottom of her heart. This azure-robed man before her was truly too invincible. Although Endless City had strength, it wasn't enough in front of this azure-robed man at all. Yi Xian was just about to speak when the old man on the platform suddenly looked at the azure-robed man and smiled lightly. I'm fortunate to meet Sect Leader Yang today. I wonder if Sect Leader Yang can give me some guidance. Give me some guidance. As soon as these words came out, everyone present looked at the azure-robed man. Guidance? This was an old man. He was actually so respectful to this azure-robed man. Who was this man? At the side, Huai also looked at the azure-robed man. She was also looking forward to it. The martial Dao experience of a powerhouse of this level would definitely be of great help to them, and it might even allow her to improve further. The azure-robed man was slightly speechless. His experience was useless to these people before him. Because he didn't cultivate. But these people before him all cultivated. They weren't in the same circle at all. Everyone present was looking at the azure-robed man. At this moment, the azure-robed man suddenly smiled and said, "Why don't you let my son say a few words?" Yi Xian's expression froze when he heard that. Motherf ****. This fellow is starting to screw his son over. The azure-robed man pointed at Yi Xian and said with a smile, "My son is also a swordsman. Although his cultivation realm is on the low side, he's very outstanding. In this world, there's basically no one besides me that can surpass his attainments in the sword Dao. Come, let's welcome my son to speak on the platform." As he spoke, he started clapping. Yi Xian's face darkened. Damn it. 10,000 horses galloped through his heart. Some people gazed at Yi Xian with a trace of curiosity in their eyes. Is this young man that formidable? Meanwhile, the azure-robed man glanced at Yi Xian and smiled, "Son, go up there and say a few words." Yi Xian's face was extremely dark. Damn it. What am I supposed to say if I go up there? Act cool in front of these people? Is that even possible? It's obviously impossible. He's asking me to go up there and embarrass myself. The azure-robed man blinked, "Everyone's waiting for you." Meanwhile, the old man spoke as well, "Young friend, just say a few words." Yi Xian turned around to look at Ah Ming. Ah Ming was slightly helpless, and he spoke via voice transmission, "I can't help you as well." How? It's not good for outsiders like us to interfere in the matters between you and your son. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly stood up and walked towards the stone platform. Everyone present was looking at Yi Xian. It didn't take long for Yi Xian to arrive on the stone platform, and he glanced at everyone present. The weakest amongst them was at the half-step intent realm. It could be said that he was the weakest amongst them. Yi Xian gazed at the azure-robed man, and the azure-robed man smiled complacently. Chapter 1659. In the stone hall, everyone was looking at Yi Xian on the stone platform. Actually, they were very curious about what Yi Xian would say. The green-clothed man was very strong. However, Yi Xian's cultivation was truly too low. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly smiled and said, "Seniors, do all of you know what cultivation realm my father is at?" Many people within the stone hall instantly gazed at the green-clothed man. What cultivation realm is he at? All of them were quite curious. Actually, everyone within the stone hall was already guessing. Since he was able to easily subdue a half-step intent swordsman, then he might have attained true intent. Moreover, there weren't many true intents throughout the history of this universe. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly spoke with a serious expression, "You're right, my father has attained intent." The atmosphere in the surroundings instantly became tense when they heard this. Intent. He really is an expert with intent. As soon as Yi Xian spoke these words, the gazes of many changed as they gazed at the green-clothed man. Respect. The difference between an expert with intent and a half-step intent realm expert was like the difference between the heavens and the earth. Meanwhile, Yi Xian continued, "Seniors, I'm sure all of you are curious about how my father attained intent, right?" All of them gazed at Yi Xian. Curious. Of course they were. Meanwhile, the old man suddenly walked over to Yi Xian and bowed slightly. "Young friend, would be eternally grateful if you're able to divulge some information to me." Many others bowed successively as well. Everyone within the stone hall was at the half-step intent realm, so what was their goal? Naturally, it was to improve further, intent. Yi Xian gazed at them, and he was in a slightly difficult position. This. The old man bowed once more. "Young friend, please provide us with guidance." The others bowed successively as well. Intent. One's consciousness would never be extinguished. Who didn't want to attain it? Moreover, once one attained intent, one's lifespan would be greatly increased. After all, even though all of them were top-rate experts of this world, they didn't have much lifespan left. They'd lived for too long. Yi Xian sighed softly, and he was still in a slightly difficult position. The old man intended to say something, but it didn't take long for him to think of something. He withdrew a thick ancient book and passed it to Yi Xian. "Young friend, this is the old man's lifetime attainments. Please accept it." Yi Xian blinked. "This." The old man said, "Yi Xian, this." Yi Xian put it away without batting an eyelid. Then, he said, "Old Song, shall we talk somewhere else?" The old man's eyes flashed. "All right." The old man was about to leave with Yi Xian. Meanwhile, countless strands of divine sense had locked onto the old man. The old man frowned slightly. A man in black suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian and the old man. He cupped his fists at Yi Xian. "Young friend, I also have some insights." Soon, everyone in the stone hall surrounded Yi Xian. Some gave him their insights, some gave him their ultimate skills, and some gave him equipment. For a moment, Yi Xian became the focus of the entire stone hall. Below, the green-robed man was somewhat speechless. Damn it, how could this guy be so good at fooling people? At the side, Arya looked at Yi Xian, who was constantly receiving gifts on the stage, and said seriously, "Little Xuanzi is amazing." Whitey nodded vigorously. Arya continued, "He's with us. I'll bring him along to play in the future." Xiaobai nodded in agreement. After a while, Yi Xian accepted everyone's gifts. Everyone was looking at Yi Xian, waiting for Yi Xian's guidance. Yi Xian said with a smile, "Seniors, please return to your seats." The experts hesitated for a moment before returning to their seats. Yi Xian said seriously, "Seniors, there are two ways to reach the intent realm. The first is the origin of the great Tao that everyone knows. However, as you all know, the origin of the great Tao no longer exists in this world. Even in the alternate dimension, reaching the origin of the great Tao is extremely rare. Therefore, it's not realistic to use the origin of the great Tao to break through the intent realm." After saying that, he paused and said, "The second way is the primordial violet energy." Primordial violet energy. Below, Whitey blinked and looked at Arya. She waved her little paw a few times, but no one knew what she was saying. Arya thought for a moment and said, "He's probably trying to get something without risking anything." Brilliant. Brilliant. Whitey, primordial violet energy. In the hall, many people's gazes fell on Whitey. In an instant, Whitey became the focus of the entire hall. Meanwhile, Yi Xian walked over to Whitey, withdrew a spatial ring and candied fruits, and placed them in Whitey's little paw. He smiled and said, "Show them some violet energy." Whitey blinked, and then she calmly put the candied fruits and the spatial ring away. She waved her little paw, and then a strand of violet energy suddenly floated up from the center of her palm. At this moment, everyone looked at that strand of violet energy. Primordial violet energy. When they saw the primordial violet energy, the expressions of everyone here gradually became solemn, and then they became excited and fervent. They hadn't seen the origin of the great Tao, but as far as they were concerned, the primordial violet energy was absolutely not inferior to the origin of the great Tao. With the primordial violet energy, perhaps they might really be able to attain intent realm. Yi Xian smiled and said, "Seniors, you don't lack hard work because you've already arrived at the end of this world. What you lack is fortuitous encounters. I believe that so long as you have sufficient primordial violet energy, then you'll be able to attain intent realm or even above it. So long as you have primordial violet energy, then your future is limitless. Life is limitless as well." Needless to say, Yi Xian's words were very provocative, and the blood of all these old fellows couldn't help but boil. What were they pursuing right now? It was intent. Life was limitless. Of course, it didn't take long for them to calm down. If they wanted to pursue limitless life and attain intent, then they needed primordial violet energy. All of them gazed at Whitey again. Seize it? The first thought in their minds was to seize it, but they quickly rejected this thought. Because of the green-clothed man. He was a true expert with intent. Seize the spirit ancestor from him? Wouldn't that be no different than courting death? Even if all of them joined forces, they would probably be no match for this man. What should we do? In next to no time, some of them gazed at Yi Xian. Yi Xian laughed bitterly. "Everyone, the primordial violet energy is extremely precious. Even for me, my father only gives me 100 strands every year. 100 strands. So, I'm unable to help all of you." The expressions of many within the hall instantly fell when they heard this. He only gives his own son 100 strands? Isn't his father too stingy? As expected, there was no familial love in front of the great Tao. Next to him, the azure-robed man looked at Yi Xian with a playful smile. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched when he saw this. However, he quickly calmed down. "Damn it! I'm not afraid. Don't be a coward, just do it. Even your own father will do it." In the stone hall, everyone looked at the green-clothed man again. The green-clothed man smiled without saying anything. They did not look for the green-clothed man, nor did they ask him. He only gave his own son 100 strands of primordial violet energy every year. Why would he give it to them for no reason? Exchange? Such an expert would definitely not be interested in their things. For a moment, everyone in the hall revealed bitter expressions. They had just seen hope, but it was going to be extinguished again. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, however, this voice instantly attracted the gazes of all the experts in the stone hall. The old man beside Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Little friend, speak quickly." Yi Xian said seriously, "Everyone, to be honest, I am now the master of the Cosmos Divine Court." The Cosmos Divine Court. Everyone was stunned when they heard this. The Cosmos Divine Court? God Yi. The expressions of everyone here had become strange. God Yi had tricked all of them. So, they didn't have a good impression of the Cosmos Divine Court. However, it was different now. The old man suddenly said, "The Cosmos Divine Court. It's a very good power that maintains the peace of the universe." The old man has always admired it. The corners of Yi Xian's mouth twitched slightly. "As if I'd believe you." Ah Ming was speechless as well. These old fellows are willing to disregard their dignity for the sake of attaining intent. The others chimed in and praised the Cosmos Divine Court. For a time, the Cosmos Divine Court had become superior. Maintain the peace of the universe. After a round of compliments, all of them gazed at Yi Xian and waited for him to continue. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "Everyone, to tell you the truth, the Cosmos Divine Court is quite lacking in people right now." Everyone instantly came to an understanding when they heard this. He wanted them to join the Cosmos Divine Court. Many of them were slightly hesitant. Wouldn't joining the Cosmos Divine Court be equivalent to being controlled by others? They were used to being free. They were definitely not used to listening to the orders of others. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly gazed at Nan Feng. You've been with me for 3 years, right? Nan Feng glanced at Yi Xian and nodded, yes. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, 3 years. How about this? I'll give you 100 strands of violet energy every month for free. I'll give you a year's worth of violet energy in advance. As he spoke, he gazed at Snowy. Snowy blinked and acted very cooperatively, and then she waved her little claw and a huge amount of violet energy surged towards Nan Feng. Nan Feng was visibly moved, and he hurriedly absorbed the violet energy. As soon as he did, a formidable aura suddenly appeared within him. He'd become stronger. Countless people were visibly moved when they witnessed this scene. The violet energy was really effective. It really was effective. Even Hua Yi's expression changed. She wasn't sure whether or not this Grand Mist Purple energy could help a half-step concept powerhouse reach concept, but she was now certain that this Grand Mist Purple energy was useful to a half-step concept powerhouse. Moreover, it was extremely useful. Right at this moment, Nan Feng suddenly opened his eyes. He glanced at himself, and then ran over to Yi Xian. He gazed at Yi Xian and said seriously, young brother, I, Nan Feng, am willing to admit defeat. I'm willing to follow you for 300 years. Not a single day less. Yi Xian was dumbstruck. 300 years? Isn't it 3 years? Nan Feng spoke seriously, how can 3 years be enough? It'll take at least 300 years. Young brother, don't say anything. I, Nan Feng, am a person who can afford to lose. 300 years, not a single day less. Oh, right. The Cosmos Court? To tell you the truth, God Yi is the person I admire the most. I've been wanting to join the Cosmos Court and pay my respects to God Yi all these years. Unfortunately, I never had the chance. It's great that young brother is here today. I, Nan Feng, am willing to join the Cosmos Court and contribute my meager strength to protect the universe. As he spoke, he suddenly took out a sword and pointed it at the sky with an extremely serious expression. I, Nan Feng, swear to the heavens that I will live and die with the Cosmos Court. Yi Xian was speechless. P.S. I finally understand something. It wasn't a matter of time, but a matter of updating. If there were too few updates, even if they weren't lousy, everyone would not be satisfied and would feel unhappy. If there were too many updates, even if it were 1 or 2 lousy chapters, everyone would still feel satisfied. At the end of the day, it was a matter of updating. Is there something wrong with my understanding? Chapter 1660. Everyone within the stone hall was stunned. Damn it. Has Nan Feng gone mad? 300 years. He even swore. Swearing wasn't a joke for experts at their level. An oath represented a form of karma. It might be good karma, or it might be bad karma. But this fellow actually swore. There was only one explanation. The primordial violet energy was really useful. It was more useful than they'd imagined, and it could even attain intent. Otherwise, a half-step intent realm expert wouldn't be so shameless. Many people within the stone hall gazed at Yi Xian when they thought up to this point. Obviously, they had to make a decision. Meanwhile, Yi Xian said, everyone, the primordial violet energy is truly too precious. Moreover, it's extremely rare. Even the spirit ancestor doesn't have much in a year. So, I'm only recruiting 10 people this time. 10. The old man suddenly grabbed Yi Xian's hand and gazed at Yi Xian. If you don't mind my age, I'd like to join the Cosmos Court as well and contribute to this universe. Yi Xian smiled. It couldn't be any better to have a senior join the Cosmos Court. As he spoke, he gazed at Little White. Little White blinked, waved its little claw, and a pile of violet energy surged towards the old man. Yi Xian smiled. Little White, the old man isn't an ordinary person. You have to give him more. Little White nodded and gave more violet energy to the old man. The old man's body instantly trembled when he absorbed the primordial violet energy, and then a strand of muddy energy emanated from his body. It was the energy of death and muddy energy. The expressions of many experts within the stone hall instantly changed when they witnessed this scene. As for Huai, she stood up immediately. The old man was obviously someone who was nearing the end of his lifespan. Because only someone who was about to die would produce the energy of death and muddy energy. At this moment, the energy of death and muddy energy had actually emanated from his body. What did this mean? It meant that the primordial violet energy could eliminate the energy of death and muddy energy. It was equivalent to forcefully extending one's life. It was countless times better than that expert's method of condensing the energy of death. At this moment, everyone within the stone hall was tempted. This included Huai. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly said, "There are only 10 places, 10, old man is willing to join the Cosmos God Court. I am Li Huajiu, half a step into the pinnacle of the intent realm. I am almost invincible in the same realm. I am willing to join the Cosmos God Court, old man Mu Lin, half-step pinnacle intent realm, unrivaled in the same realm, willing to join the Cosmos God Court." Instantly, everyone present requested to join the Cosmos God Court. Yi Xian looked at everyone and said seriously, "Everyone, I will also speak the truth. My Cosmos God Court's current enemy is the alternate dimension. In other words, joining my Cosmos God Court is equivalent to becoming an enemy of the alternate dimension. Everyone, please consider this carefully. Becoming enemies with a different dimension." Nan Feng suddenly smiled and said, "So be it. Could it be that we're afraid of them?" The old man suddenly laughed and said, "Nan Feng is right. Why would our universe be afraid of them? Weren't they just a bunch of aliens playing with time? Just do it." The others also laughed, expressing that they were not afraid of the alternate dimension. Ah Ming looked at this scene and sighed in her heart. She understood one thing. Back then, why couldn't God Yi gather the experts of this universe? Because God Yi had never considered things from the perspective of these experts. If there were no benefits, why would they help you fight against the alternate dimension? Fighting against the alternate dimension was equivalent to risking their lives. If there were no benefits, they would definitely not be willing to risk their lives. And if there were benefits, just like now, these people would fight to the death against the alternate dimension. Ah Ming sighed again. To make people risk their lives, just talking about righteousness was not enough. They also needed to give benefits. After a while, Yi Xian took everyone into the Cosmos God Court. It could be said that from now on, the Cosmos God Court had truly become the strongest force in this universe. One must know that the Cosmos God Court still had Ah Ming and the other laws of the universe. The strength of Ah Ming and the others was actually above some half-step intent realm experts. That was because their understanding of time was far above ordinary experts. At the side, the green-robed man watched quietly and did not say anything. However, there was a faint smile on his face all along. He did not stop Yi Xian from doing these things. Of course, he would not take the initiative to let Yi Xian do these things. His attitude was very simple. As long as you have the ability, I am willing to be used by you. At this time, Huai suddenly walked in front of Yi Xian. She looked at Yi Xian and smiled. "Young Master Yi, can I also join the Cosmos God Court?" Yi Xian said with a smile, "Miss Hua, are you here alone, or are you representing the Boundless City?" Huai looked at Yi Xian. "Young Master Yi, do you want me alone or the entire Endless City?" Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. "It depends on you. However, no matter how many people there are, the primordial violet aura is enough. After a moment of silence, Hua Yi smiled. Of course it's the entire endless city joining. Everyone joining. Yi Xian looked at Hua Yi. Miss Hua, I hope you understand one thing. We are going against the alien races. In the future, I can't guarantee anything. I might even die. Hua Yi smiled. We are all adults. We understand what our choice means. Yi Xian nodded. That's good. Hua Yi continued. Young Master Yi, after this ends, young Master Yi, please follow me to a place. I need to let young Master Yi understand the foundation of my endless city. Yi Xian looked at Hua Yi. Can Miss Hua be the master of the entire endless city? Hua Yi smiled. About this, young Master Yi, don't worry. When I came to find you, I have already obtained the consent of some elders of my endless city. Yi Xian nodded. That's good. Following which, this Tao discussion conference ended. Because everyone only had one goal, and that was the primordial violet aura. Nothing else was important. Only by obtaining more primordial violet aura could they achieve Intent Realm. Although half-step Intent Realm powerhouses had 100 strands of primordial violet aura every month, it was still a little too little for them. They needed more primordial violet aura. And there was only one way to get more primordial violet aura, and that was to find Yi Xian. At this moment, Hua Yi suddenly said, Young Master Yi, come with me? Yi Xian nodded. Okay. Hua Yi turned to look at the green-robed man. The green-robed man smiled. You guys go shopping. There's someone I know. I'll go meet him. With that said, he glanced at Arya and Xiaobai. Are you guys coming with me or? Arya glanced at Yi Xian. We'll go play with little Xuanzi. The green-robed man smiled. Don't get into trouble. Arya was a little dissatisfied. Brother Yang, when have you ever seen Xiaobai and I provoke trouble? It's always others who provoke us first, so we fight back passively. In the Milky Way realm, our behavior is considered self-defense. This is protected by the law. Xiaobai nodded fiercely, the green-robed man's face was full of black lines. This isn't the Milky Way realm. The law there doesn't apply here. Arya blinked. What if others bully us? The green-robed man glared at Arya. Bully my ass. You better behave yourself. With that said, he glanced at Yi Xian. Keep an eye on them. Don't let them get into trouble. And don't let others bully them. With that said, he turned around and disappeared. Yi Xian looked at Arya. Arya licked her sugar-coated hawes, looking very obedient. In fact, from the appearance, Arya and Xiaobai were really harmless. But Yi Xian knew that these two were simply bandits. Don't provoke them. Otherwise, I'll rip off your underwear. In fact, he was particularly curious about the storage ring on Xiaobai's hand. This little guy's storage ring definitely contained many very, very awesome treasures. At this moment, Hua Yi suddenly said, Young Master Yi, let's go. Yi Xian nodded. Under Hua Yi's lead, Yi Xian and the others walked out of the stone temple. On the way, Yi Xian glanced at Hua Yi. Miss Hua, what kind of force is this endless city? Hua Yi smiled and said, a force that stands aloof from worldly affairs. Yi Xian asked, stands aloof from worldly affairs? Hua Yi nodded. Actually, the people here are basically aloof from worldly affairs. Because the people here only have one goal, and that is to achieve the state of mind and achieve the legendary immortality. Apart from that, everything else doesn't mean much to us. Yi Xian smiled and said, I feel that the meaning of life is not just cultivation and seeking Tao. Hua Yi smiled slightly. That's because young Master Yi is still young. When you live for tens of thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, you will change your way of thinking. Yi Xian nodded. Perhaps. Before long, Huai brought Yi Xian and the rest to the front of a grand hall. She waved her lily-white hand lightly, and the grand hall's door directly opened. After entering the grand hall, Yi Xian discovered that there were 26 people standing in the grand hall. There were men and women, and all of them were half-step concept powerhouses. Huai glanced at everyone. Greetings, young Master Yi. Inside the hall, everyone bowed slightly. Greetings, young Master Yi. Yi Xian nodded slightly. Everyone, no need to be overly courteous. Huai looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, Young Master Yi, there are a total of 36 half-step concept powerhouses in my endless city. Including me here, there are 27 people. There are still 9 people in closed seclusion. Yi Xian nodded. Since Miss Hua brought me here, you should have something to say, right? Huai nodded. She looked at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, my endless city is willing to follow young Master Yi to fight against the alternate dimension, even if we have to pay with our lives. We only have one request, and that is young Master Yi can provide us with grand mist purple gas so that we can reach concept. Yi Xian didn't say anything. He knew what Huai meant. She wanted him to help them reach concept first. Huai said with a smile, I've estimated that there are 100 strands of grand mist purple gas every month. At this rate, we will need at least 100 years to have enough grand mist purple gas to break through to concept. 100 years is really too long. Yi Xian said with a smile, Miss Hua, I understand you. But forgive me for speaking bluntly. After you reach concept, will you really listen to my orders? Just as Huai was about to speak, Yi Xian said, Miss Hua, you said that you will help me fight against the alternate dimension because you need the grand mist purple aura. What if you don't need it? Will you still help me fight against the other dimension? Don't make any promises. As you said, at your level, apart from advancing further, everything else is meaningless, isn't it? Huai was silent. Yi Xian said with a smile, Miss Hua, forgive me for being blunt, but the first thing you should think about is not what you want from me, but what you can give me. After that, he looked at Arya, Little White, and Ah Ming, let's go. At this moment, an old man suddenly stood in front of them. The Grand Swordmaster. Chapter 1661. Arya blinked her eyes when she saw the old man blocking in front of her. No one knew what he was up to. She couldn't take the initiative to bully others. But she couldn't let others bully her either. Yi Xian smiled and turned to look at Huai. Miss Hua, are you going to keep us here? Huai suddenly walked in front of the old man. Just as the old man was about to speak, Huai suddenly punched his abdomen. Boom! The old man's physical body directly collapsed and his soul floated out. One punch destroyed the physical body. Seeing this scene, the expressions of the experts in the hall changed. As for the old man whose physical body was destroyed, his face was filled with disbelief. Huai looked at the old man. Did I ask you to stop young Master Yi? Keep Yi Xian here? She naturally didn't have the guts. At the beginning, she indeed had the idea of attacking the spirit ancestor. But after seeing the strength of the green-robed man, she decisively dispelled this idea. All the half-step intent realm experts in the hall added together wouldn't be a match for the green-robed man. Now, she had the idea of attacking the spirit ancestor. How retarded would she have to be to do that? Huai turned to look at Yi Xian and bowed slightly. Young Master Yi, I'm sorry. Yi Xian smiled. Miss Hua, I feel that you don't really control Endless City. Huai's expression was a little gloomy. Young Master Yi, don't worry. This kind of situation won't happen again. Yi Xian looked at Huai. There won't be a future. Miss Hua, I don't need Endless City to join the Cosmos Divine Court. After saying that, he turned and left. Huai was stunned and was about to speak. At this moment, Arya suddenly turned and looked at Huai. Don't come over, or I'll beat you to death. Huai. Soon, Yi Xian and the others disappeared into the distance. In the stone hall, Huai's expression was extremely ugly. At this moment, a middle-aged man suddenly said, "City Lord, this." Huai slowly closed her eyes. I underestimated him. I thought he was just a simple-minded second generation. It's my fault for underestimating him. She brought Yi Xian here. The goal was actually to let Yi Xian see Endless City's strength, then negotiate with Yi Xian, in order to obtain even more benefits. However, she hadn't expected that Yi Xian wouldn't fall for it at all. Rob? Endless City definitely wouldn't dare. With that green-robed man around, stealing the Spirit Patriarch's life would be equivalent to dying early. There was only one way to obtain the primordial violet chi, and that was to look for Yi Xian. Finding the azure-clothed man would not do at all. Because the azure-clothed man's rank was too high. Even if the Endless City packaged up and gave it to him, he would not even take a fancy to it. They could only look for Yi Xian. But now, following Yi Xian's rejection of Endless City's joining, Endless City became even more passive now. A moment later, Huai suddenly said, "Get someone to help me investigate this young Master Yi. I want to know everything about him." Yes. An expert quietly disappeared from the hall. Huai looked into the distance, not knowing what she was thinking. On the street, Yi Xian's group was walking slowly. Ming glanced at Yi Xian. "Are you really willing to sacrifice so many half-step intent realm experts?" Yi Xian smiled. "What do you think?" Ming said solemnly, "With their help, we will be much better off." Yi Xian said softly, Ming, if all the half-step intent realm experts in this cosmos follow us, will we be able to fight against the alternate dimension?" Ming was silent for a moment, then said, "Probably not." Yi Xian looked at Ming. "Probably?" Ming nodded. The alternate dimension definitely has intent realm experts, and there might even be experts above them. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. In other words, even if we gather all the peak experts in the cosmos, we still won't be a match for the alternate dimension, right? Ming said, "You're wrong." Yi Xian looked at Ming, who had a calm expression. "Have you forgotten about your father and your sister? And your big brother?" Yi Xian was speechless. Ming continued, "Your father is taking you with him because he wants to help you. However, how much you can get from him will depend on yourself." Yi Xian nodded. "I understand." Ming continued, "We must fight for the people here if we can. Even if they are placed in the alternate dimension, they are considered above average. Although they don't have much of an advantage against the otherworldly dimension at present, once we have experts with domains and above, we can stall the top-notch experts of the otherworldly dimension. At that time, they will be very useful." Yi Xian nodded. "Indeed." Saying this, he glanced at Ming. "We must help you reach intent realm. In this cosmos, the laws of the cosmos had the highest chance of reaching intent realm. Their foundation was very deep. As long as they had enough grand mist purple gas, it wouldn't be difficult for them to reach intent realm. There was also Sister Nian, too, and the Yang family's ancestor." Thinking of this, Yi Xian looked at Little White. "Little White, how much purple gas do you have?" Little White blinked and waved its little paws randomly. Yi Xian looked at Arya. Arya said, "A lot." Yi Xian was somewhat puzzled. "Why is there a lot?" Arya explained, "Because Little White's grand mist purple gas is converted from ordinary spiritual chi." Converted? Yi Xian blinked. In other words, Little White can convert ordinary spiritual chi into grand mist purple gas? Arya nodded. Yes. However, if she transforms too much, she will also get tired. Hearing this, Yi Xian and Ah Ming looked at each other, their eyes filled with shock. Conversion. What did this mean? It meant that as long as this little guy was here, the grand mist purple gas was infinite. It was truly infinite. This was too outrageous. As long as this little guy was willing, he could convert all the spiritual chi into grand mist purple gas. At this time, Arya suddenly said, Little White can't convert spiritual chi recklessly. Yi Xian was a little puzzled. Why? Arya licked the Tanghulu. Because if Little White converts spiritual chi recklessly, the spiritual chi of this world will be exhausted. For example, she can convert the spiritual chi of this place into grand mist purple gas, but the spiritual chi of this world will be exhausted instantly, and all living things will die. In addition, a large area of ordinary spiritual chi can be converted into a little grand mist purple gas. Strictly speaking, such a conversion was not worth it for this universe. So, Brother Yang doesn't let Little White convert grand mist purple gas recklessly. Yi Xian said softly, I see. That's right. If this little guy could convert spiritual chi recklessly, and the ratio was 1-to-1, it would be too terrifying. Because it meant that this little guy could change the spiritual chi of the whole world. And the current situation was that although this little guy could also convert the spiritual chi of this world into grand mist purple gas, she could only convert one strand of grand mist purple gas out of 100 strands. This meant that if this little guy converted spiritual chi, a large number of super experts would appear in this world, but all living things below these experts would die. Because the converted grand mist purple gas couldn't support the whole universe. Yi Xian glanced at the little white guy. In fact, this little guy had the ability to destroy the universe. As long as she was willing, she could suck the spiritual chi of this universe dry. This was too terrifying. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian's eyes suddenly lit up. He could definitely take this little guy and Arya to the alternate dimension. After going there, this little guy could absorb spiritual chi crazily. At this time, Ah Ming suddenly said, we can let her go to the alternate dimension. Let them all be annihilated. Yi Xian shook his head with a smile. Unless his father also went to the alternate dimension, this little guy would have no hope of surviving in the alternate dimension. After all, the experts of the alternate dimension would absolutely not let her absorb spiritual chi. Yi Xian collected his thoughts and then looked at Ah Ming. Ah Ming, you gather all the laws, and I will provide you with grand mist purple gas to help you break through. How about it? Ah Ming looked at Little White. Is she willing? Little White nodded, expressing her willingness. Ah Ming shook her head with a smile. She had finally realized. This little guy really treated Yi Xian as one of her own. After a moment, Ah Ming left. Of course, she left with a lot of grand mist purple gas. As Yi Xian had said, the strength of their laws had to reach a higher level. After Ah Ming left, Yi Xian was about to go find his father, but at this time, the green-robed man suddenly appeared in front of him. The green-robed man said with a smile, I can't stay here for too long. Yi Xian was startled. What's the matter? The green-robed man nodded and said with a smile, an old friend of mine found a rather interesting place. I want to take your aunt and the others for a stroll, so, Yi Xian said in a deep voice, can you take me with you? The green-robed man immediately shook his head. Yi Xian was somewhat puzzled. Why can't you take me? The green-robed man glared at Yi Xian. Your father and your aunt and the others are going to have a romantic time. How can you follow them? The two of us can do our own things, understand? Yi Xian's expression froze. Damn it! Am I really your biological son? At this time, the green-robed man said again, I can stay for a few more days. In these few days, I have decided to properly train you. Come, let's go and cultivate. After saying that, everyone disappeared. When they reappeared, they were already on the 99th floor. The world of the 9th floor had been restored. The green-robed man handed his sword to Yi Xian. Practice the sword drawing technique. I will personally guide you. Yi Xian nodded and suddenly slashed with his sword. Qi. A wisp of sword qi pierced through the sky. The sky was directly torn apart, and a huge crack that was tens of thousands of feet long appeared. At this moment, his strength was completely different from before. The power of the sword drawing technique could be said to be extremely terrifying. However, the green-robed man shook his head. Weak. You are really too weak. Yi Xian was speechless. The green-robed man sighed again. My invincible sword skill was actually used like this by you. In the future, when you go out, don't tell people that this sword skill was created by me. It is too embarrassing. Yi Xian was speechless. Damn it, will you die if you don't insult me for a day? The green-robed man glanced at Yi Xian and sighed again. Too weak. Yi Xian suddenly laughed. Father, I heard that you were beaten by Qing'er in the past. Is that true? The green-robed man's expression froze. Yi Xian continued. I also heard that you were beaten very badly. Is that true? The green-robed man was speechless. The green-robed man suddenly took out a sword. Come, let's practice in real life. Yi Xian was speechless. P.S. I don't want a ticket. Chapter 1662. Real person sparring. Yi Xian's face darkened. Damn it, this old man really doesn't care about face at all. He's just looking for a reasonable excuse to beat me up. Soon, shrill screams rang out in the world of the 9th floor. At the side, Arya licked her candied paws and shook her head. So tragic. Xiaobai nodded vigorously and waved her little paws. It was indeed tragic. After a long time, Yi Xian lay on the ground. At this moment, he had no strength left in his body. He couldn't fight back at all. He was beaten up. The man in green sat next to Yi Xian and smiled. How do you feel? Yi Xian rolled his eyes at the man in green. I don't feel anything. The man in green laughed. Kid, don't tell me you really think I'm looking for an excuse to beat you up. Yi Xian said, isn't that the case? The man in green laughed. That's not the case. I beat you up because I want you to understand some principles. Yi Xian was a little puzzled. What principles? The man in green blinked. Think about it yourself. Yi Xian was speechless. The man in green said seriously, you have to figure it out yourself. Yi Xian's face darkened. Figure it out my ass. I just exposed your shortcomings. Damn it. He's such a bully. He can beat me up, but he has to act like he's doing it for your own good. He's too inhumane. Endure it. Yi Xian took a deep breath. My fists aren't strong enough. I have to endure it. The man in green suddenly looked at Xiaobai. Heal him. Xiaobai waved its little paws and a pile of purple gas enveloped Yi Xian. After a while, Yi Xian returned to normal. The man in green looked at Yi Xian and smiled. Do you know where the core of the sword drawing technique is? Yi Xian shook his head. The man in green said, there are two cores. The first is the sword drawing technique. This sword technique focuses on instantaneous explosive power. The second is overlapping. Yi Xian was a little curious. Overlapping? The azure-robed man smiled and said, yes. With your current strength, if you can overlap 100 sword drawing techniques in an instant, then you can even kill an expert with an intent realm. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then said, I've only just entered divine sense. The green-robed man knocked on Yi Xian's head. What do you mean by spirit trance? Don't think about the realm. Come, try it now. Yi Xian nodded. He suddenly unsheathed his sword. The moment he unsheathed his sword, he immediately sheathed it and slashed again. Chi. In an instant, 2 strands of sword chi tore through the sky, and the sky was directly torn into pieces. The mountains in the distance were directly transformed into powder. Moreover, even space was torn into nothingness. This time, it was at least twice as powerful as before. However, the green-robed man still shook his head. No. His strength is not enough, and his speed is not fast enough. Yi Xian blinked. Not fast enough? The azure-robed man nodded. You want to merge the 2 sword energies into one. What do you mean by overlapping? Only when 100 strands of sword chi merge into one will it be considered true overlapping. 100 strands of sword chi overlapped. Yi Xian's expression became solemn. He had overlapped 2 strands of sword chi, and the power was already so terrifying. If he overlapped 100 strands, wouldn't he be able to split the world in half? The green-robed man suddenly asked. Do you think it's very difficult? Yi Xian nodded. It's difficult just thinking about it. The green-robed man smiled. Will it be more difficult than the alien dimension? Hearing this, Yi Xian was stunned. The green-robed man lightly patted Yi Xian's shoulder. There's nothing difficult. It just depends on whether you're willing to do it or not. If you deny yourself before doing it, then you won't be able to do anything. Yi Xian nodded. I understand. The green-robed man smiled. Start practicing. I'll guide you. Yi Xian nodded. In the following time, Yi Xian began to practice the sword drawing technique like crazy. He practiced this move. Crazily practicing. One sword after another. At the start, he could barely overlap 2 swords. But gradually, he could overlap 3 swords, 4 swords. During this period, the green-robed man didn't leave and continued to guide him. It could be said that the main reason why Yi Xian could improve so quickly was because of the green-robed man's guidance. This sword-drawing technique was created by the green-robed man. With his guidance, Yi Xian would definitely improve by leaps and bounds. Outside the 99th floor. A woman stood at the entrance of the building. This woman was Hua Yi. She had already been here for 2 days. Just to see Yi Xian. However, Yi Xian was cultivating and wouldn't see anyone. And she had no choice but to wait. Now, some half-step intent realm experts of Endless City had already joined the Cosmos God Court. With the primordial violet chi, these people had a high chance of reaching intent realm. Although it might not happen in a short period of time, as time passes, the gap between Endless City and these people would only get bigger and bigger. And if these people really had intent realm experts outside the city, then Endless City would completely become a little brother. And she had also obtained Yi Xian's information. She already understood Yi Xian's personality and character. In terms of character, there was no problem. He was a trustworthy person. Simply put, Endless City must cling to this thigh. Several days later. In the 9th floor, Yi Xian was still crazily cultivating that sword drawing technique. The more he cultivated, the more excited he got. Because he realized that this sword drawing technique was really terrifying. Especially after overlapping, the power that erupted in that instant could really destroy heaven and earth. And now, he could already overlap 16 sword drawing techniques. 16 sword drawing techniques overlapping. His current sword drawing technique had truly undergone a qualitative change. This slash was enough to kill a deity-exterminating realm expert in a second. However, this was not his goal. His goal was to be able to shake intent realm experts. And to shake intent realm experts, he must have the ability to destroy time. However, his current sword drawing technique was still unable to damage the dimension of time. Still not enough. He continued to cultivate crazily. Anyway, with Xiaobai's primordial violet vapor, no matter how tired he was, he could quickly recover his strength. Time passed bit by bit. During this period, the green-robed man did not leave. He just stood at the side, giving pointers and personally demonstrating. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly stopped. He lay on the ground and completely relaxed. He was exhausted. The sword strike he had performed just now had overlapped with 29 sword drawing techniques. And when this sword slashed out, he immediately felt as if all the strength in his body was sucked out, and he had no strength at all. The green-robed man walked in front of Yi Xian and said with a smile, "Do you feel your limit?" Yi Xian nodded, "It should be my limit." The green-robed man shook his head, "Not yet." Yi Xian was stunned. The green-robed man said with a smile, "You can still do better." Yi Xian asked, "Can still do better?" The green-robed man nodded, "Limit." "What is limit?" "Limits are forced out. You need to force yourself again." Yi Xian was silent. After a moment, he got up and continued to practice. 3 days later, he was able to overlap 30 sword drawing techniques. There was another one. After drawing 30 times in an instant, Yi Xian fell down again. He felt worse than 3 days ago. 3 days ago, he felt as if all the strength in his body was sucked out. This time, he felt as if his whole body was paralyzed. Other than his eyes, he could not move anything else. The green-robed man appeared in front of Yi Xian again. Yi Xian said weakly, "I can't do it anymore." The green-robed man said with a smile, 3 days ago, you also said that you had reached your limit." Yi Xian smiled bitterly, "This time, I have really reached my limit. If I break through my realm, I should be able to go further." The green-robed man shook his head, "It has nothing to do with your realm, it has to do with your state of mind. The current you has completely denied yourself." Yi Xian was a little puzzled, "I have not reached my limit?" The green-robed man said with a smile, "What do you think?" Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "If I use this sword now, I will be like a cripple." This sword technique is no different from suicide. The green-robed man shook his head, "Don't think about other problems. What you need to think about now is how to reach your limit. Even if you only attack once, you have to reach your limit this time." Yi Xian nodded. The green-robed man looked at Xiaobai, "Heal him." Xiaobai waved its little paw again, and a purple aura enveloped Yi Xian. Soon, his body returned to normal. Just as Yi Xian was about to attack, the green-robed man suddenly said, "Don't you notice anything different?" Yi Xian was stunned and asked, "What's different?" The green-robed man smiled, "Your body." Yi Xian looked at his body, his eyes filled with doubt, "It's still a dimensional body." The green-robed man shook his head, "Silly son, didn't you notice that your physical strength has become stronger?" Hearing this, Yi Xian was stunned. That's right. He had actually neglected the strength of his own body. How could he draw his sword 30 times in an instant? One of the main reasons was that his physical strength had become stronger. Moreover, it was not just an ordinary level of strength. He discovered that he had become much stronger. His physical strength was much, much stronger than before. The green-robed man continued, "During this period, every time you break through your limit, your physical strength will also break through. Your physical strength is now at least twice as strong as before. Your physical strength can become even stronger, and your sword-drawing technique can also become stronger." Yi Xian took a deep breath, "Continue." With that, he began to draw his sword again. The green-robed man walked to the side and sat down, looking at Yi Xian in the distance, a trace of a smile on his face. Actually, he was really envious of Yi Xian. After all, he had not enjoyed such treatment in the past. Thinking of someone, the smile on the green-robed man's face disappeared. Another month passed. Yi Xian could already overlap 42 sword-drawing techniques. 42 sword-drawing techniques. Now, every time he swung his sword, the space within hundreds of thousands of miles would become more illusory. Beside him, Arya suddenly said, "Brother Yang, when are we leaving?" The green-robed man smiled, "Soon. Soon." Arya glanced at Yi Xian in the distance, "Are you really not taking little Xuanzi away?" The green-robed man looked at Yi Xian in the distance, and after a moment, he said softly, "He has to walk his own path. Following me is not helping him, but harming him." Chapter 1663. The green-robed man knew very well that Yi Xian would never be able to grow if he followed him. Only Yi Xian could surpass him in the future. Otherwise, with his protection, Yi Xian would always be a child. Arya sighed softly, "What's a pity?" The green-robed man looked at Arya, "What's a pity?" Arya said seriously, "If little Xuanzi were with us, it would be fun." Lil Bai kept nodding. She liked Yi Xian, too. He was to her liking. They were on the same side. The green-robed man was speechless. If these three little fellows teamed up, would there still be peace in this world? Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, another month had passed. At this moment, Yi Xian could already overlap 50 sword-drawing techniques. Under his crazy cultivation, his physical body had also been greatly improved. His physical strength was much stronger than before. Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground. At this moment, he felt that his right arm was filled with endless power. Right now, he could easily kill a deity-exterminating realm powerhouse. He could even kill a half-step will realm powerhouse. 50 overlapped sword-drawing techniques could really destroy heaven and earth. However, there was a drawback. After using this sword, he could not use a second sword. With this sword, it was either you die or I die. After resting for a while, Yi Xian was about to cultivate again. At this moment, the green-robed man suddenly said, "There's no need." Yi Xian looked at the green-robed man. The green-robed man smiled and said, "You have now reached the limit of your physical body. Although you can still improve by cultivating, the effect is minimal." Yi Xian blinked. "Is it over?" The green-robed man shook his head. "Just started." As he spoke, he looked at Arya. "Give me some blood." Arya glanced at Yi Xian. She hesitated for a moment and then pointed with her fingers. A drop of blood fell in front of Yi Xian. Arya's blood. The green-robed man was a little helpless. "Give me more." Arya blinked. "That hurts." The green-robed man smiled and said, "No need for too much." Arya thought for a moment and then bit her fingertip. Soon, blood gushed out from her fingertip. The green-robed man waved his right hand and the blood floated in front of Yi Xian. He looked at Yi Xian and said, "Eat it." Yi Xian asked, "Do you want to help me strengthen my body?" The green-robed man nodded. "Your current physical body is not strong enough. If you want to overlap 100 sword-drawing techniques, you have to become stronger." Yi Xian was a little puzzled. "Why didn't you strengthen my body first?" The green-robed man shook his head and smiled, "If I had strengthened your physical body from the start, then you wouldn't have been able to break through the limits of your physical body. Right now, you have already reached the limit of your physical body. If you break through the limit of your physical body now, then you will have an unexpected harvest." Yi Xian still wanted to ask something, but the green-robed man suddenly said, "What's with all this nonsense? As he spoke, he pointed with his fingers, and Arya's blood directly entered Yi Xian's throat. Boom! In an instant, Yi Xian's body directly erupted with an extremely terrifying power. It was not his power, but the power of Arya's blood. The green-robed man gently patted Yi Xian's shoulder with his right hand, and that power was directly suppressed. The green-robed man said, "How do you feel now?" Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "I feel that there is a fire burning in my body." The green-robed man nodded, "Don't suppress it. Let it continue to burn. This is the power of Arya's blood. It can temper your body." Yi Xian said, "It's very uncomfortable." The green-robed man smiled and said, "How can it not be uncomfortable to cultivate the physical body? Just bear with it." Yi Xian nodded. He found that under the burning of Arya's blood, his body was gradually changing. As time passed, a faint blood-red flame appeared on Yi Xian's body. Yi Xian's face also became a little twisted. Pain. He felt that Arya's blood was corroding his body, from the inside out. However, he still forced himself to bear with it. "I can't embarrass myself in front of this bastard of a father." The green-robed man looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, "How do you feel now?" Yi Xian said with a trembling voice, "I'm fine." The green-robed man's mouth slightly curled up, "That's good." As he said, he took out a white jade bottle. Yi Xian suddenly felt that something was wrong. "This is?" The green-robed man smiled and said, "This is some good stuff that I specially found for you. Come, open your mouth." Yi Xian hesitated and then said, "Why don't we slow down first?" The green-robed man laughed and scolded, "Slow your ass. Eat it." As he said, he pinched Yi Xian's mouth with one hand and held the white jade bottle with the other hand. He aimed it at Yi Xian's mouth and poured some black flames suddenly into Yi Xian's body. Boom! In an instant, Yi Xian's eyes opened wide. Ah! At this moment, Yi Xian felt that he was going to die on the spot. His body was being annihilated inch by inch. Yi Xian couldn't help but say, "Damn, Dad, are you trying to kill me?" Annihilation. This was no joke. When he saw this scene, the green-robed man placed his right hand lightly on Yi Xian's shoulder. Boom! Something in Yi Xian's body seemed to be suppressed, and his body started to return to normal. However, there was another black flame on his body. Pain. At this moment, Yi Xian was in extreme pain. Although his body was not being annihilated, the burning pain still existed. This was even more terrifying than death. It was truly a life worse than death. The green-robed man smiled and said, "Is it very painful? If you can't stand it, then cry out. I won't laugh at you." Yi Xian was speechless. The green-robed man smiled and then said seriously, "This is an extraterrestrial spiritual fire, a very powerful fire. It can temper your body. Not only can it greatly improve your physical body, but with it in your body, your physique will also become a pure spiritual fire body, which means you will be invulnerable to all fires. Anyway, so far, I haven't seen anything more powerful than this fire. In the future, it will be one with you. Endure it." Yi Xian took a deep breath. Although it was worse than death, he had to endure it. He couldn't let this cheap dad laugh at him. The green-robed man retreated to the side and looked at Yi Xian with a faint smile on his face. Arya suddenly said, "Brother Yang, can I say something that you might not like to hear?" The green-robed man glanced at Arya. "What do you want to say?" Arya blinked. "Why do you have a different attitude towards Nianxue and little Xuanzi?" Nianxue. Naturally, it was young Nianxue. In other words, she was Yi Xian's sister. However, she was not here now. Arya suddenly asked, "Is little Xuanzi really not your biological son?" The green-robed man glanced at Arya. "You're not allowed to eat tanghulu for 5 days." Arya's expression froze. She slapped herself and muttered, "Who asked you to ask blindly?" Time passed bit by bit. Slowly, Yi Xian felt that his body was no longer in so much pain. It should be said that he was slowly getting used to the burning pain. During this period, Little White would also use purple gas to help Yi Xian recover his physical body from time to time. A month later, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. He got up and clenched his right hand. Boom! With this clench, the entire world became illusory. Power. Yi Xian took a deep breath. At this moment, he felt endless power. The green-robed man smiled and said, "How do you feel?" Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Very powerful." Yi Xian suddenly looked at Arya, "Give him a punch." Arya walked in front of Yi Xian, blinked, and then punched Yi Xian's abdomen. Boom! Yi Xian directly retreated thousands of meters away. The space where he passed was annihilated. When he landed on the ground, the space within thousands of meters collapsed and was annihilated with him as the center. However, he was fine. His physical body had forcefully withstood Arya's punch. Yi Xian found it hard to believe. He did not expect his physical defense to be so abnormal. How terrifying was Arya's strength. It could be said that if Arya used her full strength, it would be easy for her to destroy the world with a punch. But he was actually fine after taking a punch from her. At this moment, the green-robed man suddenly smiled and said, "Try the sword-drawing technique." Yi Xian nodded. He opened his palm and a sheathed longsword appeared in his hand. It was the green-robed man's sword. His sword could not withstand his current strength. Yi Xian turned and looked into the distance. He suddenly drew his sword and slashed. Chi! A wisp of sword energy suddenly broke through the air. Boom! In an instant, the entire world began to shatter. 96 sword-drawing techniques. Yi Xian looked at the shattered world in front of him and was dumbfounded. 96 sword-drawing techniques. Had he become so strong? The green-robed man said softly, "This sword of yours is enough to destroy the time dimension. However, it is only the time dimension of ordinary people." Yi Xian looked at the green-robed man, "There are different types of time dimension?" The green-robed man smiled and said, "The stronger the person, the stronger his time dimension. Do you understand?" Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Dad, do you also have a time dimension?" The green-robed man smiled and said, "Nonsense. Everyone has their own time dimension." Yi Xian was a little curious, "Can you go to the future?" The green-robed man shook his head and smiled, "Why would I go to the future?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "Aren't you curious about the future?" The green-robed man walked in front of Yi Xian and gently patted Yi Xian's shoulder. "It is because the future is uncertain that a person's life is meaningful. If you knew your future in advance, wouldn't it be especially boring?" Yi Xian said softly, "That's true." The green-robed man continued, "Moreover, going to the future is extremely risky because the future is uncertain. For example, a person might be a rich person in the future, but because he can foresee it in advance, he might not struggle. And if he doesn't struggle, his life's fate will change. Because the future is uncertain, any choice a person makes, or even a thought, will produce a different future. Do you understand?" Yi Xian nodded, "I understand." The green-robed man smiled and said, "I will bring you to the last place. After that, Dad will be leaving." Yi Xian was a little curious, "What place?" The green-robed man smiled and said, "A rather mysterious place. Dad will give you one last gift, then we will say goodbye. You play, I play, and no one will disturb each other." Yi Xian was speechless. P.S. Please tip. Chapter 1664. After leaving the 99th floor, Yi Xian saw Huayi. This Huayi had been waiting here for months. Seeing Yi Xian, Hua Yi immediately greeted him with a smile, "Young Master Yi." Yi Xian smiled, "Is there anything I can help you with, Miss Hua?" Hua Yi bowed slightly, "Young Master Yi, I'm here to apologize." Yi Xian smiled, "I'm not angry." Hua Yi hesitated for a moment, then said, "Young Master Yi, are you really not angry?" Yi Xian smiled, "It's fake." Hua Yi smiled bitterly and bowed again, "Young Master Yi, I sincerely want to join the Cosmos God Court. I hope young Master Yi will approve it." Yi Xian didn't say anything. Hua Yi said again, "I'll adjust my attitude later." Yi Xian glanced at Hua Yi, "Miss Hua, can you really represent the entire Endless City?" Hua Yi smiled, "Young Master Yi can rest assured about this." Yi Xian said with a smile, "I'm just worried." Hua Yi said solemnly, "Young Master Yi, rest assured. That kind of thing will never happen again." Yi Xian looked at Hua Yi, "Let me think about it." Hua Yi, Yi Xian looked at the green-robed man, "Dad, let's go." The green-robed man nodded slightly, "All right." Watching Yi Xian and the others leave, Hua Yi sighed softly. She naturally knew what Yi Xian meant. Yi Xian was telling her that he didn't necessarily need her endless city. She shouldn't think too highly of herself. After a moment, Hua Yi suddenly smiled. Actually, Yi Xian didn't refuse this time, which meant that Endless City had a chance. A great chance. Hua Yi turned and left. In the distance, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Dad, can you introduce me to the friend you mentioned earlier?" The green-robed man glanced at Yi Xian, "What are you going to do?" Yi Xian smiled, "Just to get to know him." The green-robed man sneered, "Don't think I don't know what you're up to." Yi Xian, the green-robed man said, "Let's talk about your body. Your body should be at the intent realm now. Ordinary intent realm experts can't break it. But that doesn't mean you're invincible. Do you understand what I mean?" Yi Xian nodded, "Understood." The green-clothed man smiled and said, "Remember, don't rely too much on your physical body. It's best if you don't use your physical body to resist. Because if you encounter a true expert, using your physical body to resist is equivalent to courting death. Understand?" Yi Xian nodded. "I will." The green-robed man smiled, "The power of this sword-drawing technique has no upper limit. No, it should be said that its upper limit depends on you. So, if you have time in the future, practice more. When you can stack up to 1,000, you'll find that any intent realm or alien race is trash." Yi Xian blinked, 1,000? The green-robed man smiled, "Is it very difficult?" Yi Xian nodded, "For me now, it is indeed very difficult." The green-robed man patted Yi Xian's shoulder lightly, "It can't be done in one go. Take it slow." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "What other aspects do I need to improve?" The green-robed man smiled, "Many areas." Yi Xian, soon, the group arrived in front of the city gate. An old man stood at the city gate. The old man wore a loose black robe and held a strange walking stick in his hand. Seeing the green-robed man, the old man immediately walked over and smiled, "Brother Yang." The green-robed man smiled, "Brother Mu, you came a little early." The old man smiled, "I was eager to see a friend." At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly bowed slightly, "Hello, Uncle Mu." Hearing this, the old man looked at Yi Xian, sized up Yi Xian, and smiled, "A dragon among men." The green-robed man smiled, "Brother Mu, I'll get straight to the point. This little fellow is a little weak now, so I want to borrow your holy land." Elder Mu smiled, "No problem. Let's go." The green-robed man nodded, waved his right hand, and everyone disappeared on the spot. Very soon, Yi Xian felt everything in front of him being torn apart. Needless to say, he was quite shocked at this moment. He knew that his father was bringing him through space. Moreover, this speed was too terrifying. If it wasn't for the protection of his father's sword energy, his current physical body would probably be unable to resist it. Thinking of this, Yi Xian couldn't help but glance at the green-robed man. Should I be more obedient in the future? Right at this moment, the green-robed man suddenly smiled, "We're here." As soon as he finished speaking, the surroundings returned to normal. At this moment, they were already on top of a huge rock. Not far in front of them, there was a huge mountain that was suspended in the air. The mountain was at least 10,000 zhang high, directly above the clouds. Most importantly, this kind of mountain was suspended in the air. Besides that, there were countless other mountains that floated behind the mountain, and it was impossible to see the end of them. It was a magnificent sight. Meanwhile, Elder Mu suddenly looked up at the top of the mountain. "Welcome the guests." His voice resounded through the world. Meanwhile, an enormous path of light that was over 3 kilometers wide poured down from the top of the mountain to their feet. At the same time, over 100 experts in golden armor suddenly appeared on both sides of the path of light, and all of them turned around and bowed respectfully to the green-robed man and the others. The green-robed man glanced at Elder Mu with slight helplessness. "All these fancy things." Elder Mu roared with laughter, "It's just a formality. Let's go." All of them walked towards the top of the mountain, and an enormous ancient city appeared before them when they arrived at the top of the mountain. Yi Xian looked up at the sky above the city gates, and there were 3 large words there: Heaven-Splitting City. After entering the city, the streets were at least 300 kilometers wide, and there were countless people gathered on both sides of the streets. These people were all curiously sizing up Yi Xian and the others. Heaven-Splitting City. The path of light welcomed the guests. Such treatment had not been seen for thousands of years. Who was it? At this moment, an elder suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian and the others, and he bowed slightly. "Greetings, Elder Mu." "Greetings, sect leader Yang." Elder Mu nodded. "Make the arrangements. Little friend Yi wants to use the sacred land." Hearing this, the elder immediately looked troubled. "This," Elder Mu frowned slightly, "is there a problem?" The elder hurriedly said, "No. It's just that Mulyan is using the sacred land now." Mulyan. Hearing this, the elder was stunned, and then fell silent. Mulyan. The most monstrous genius in the history of the Heaven-Splitting clan. Her position in the Heaven-Splitting clan was extremely special, as her bloodline had mutated since she was born, and this mutation had caused the bloodline of everyone in the Heaven-Splitting clan to break through. This breakthrough had caused the overall strength of the Heaven-Splitting clan to rise greatly. It could be said that Mulyan's position in the Heaven-Splitting clan was higher than his, the clan leader. Because she was the future hope of the Heaven-Splitting clan. This time, Elder Mu was in a difficult position. At this moment, the green-robed man suddenly smiled. "It's all right, we'll just wait." Elder Mu was a little apologetic. "Brother Yang," the green-robed man smiled, "it's no big deal." Elder Mu cupped his fists. "Thank you." The green-robed man looked at Yi Xian and smiled. "Let's go. Let's go for a walk and have a chat." Yi Xian nodded. "All right." Arya suddenly said, "Brother Yang, can we go play by ourselves?" The green-robed man glared at Arya. "No." Of course, he knew what this little girl was thinking. Xiaobai had definitely sensed some treasure again, and the 2 little fellows wanted to go and touch it. In Xiaobai's world, as long as the treasure followed her, it would not be considered stealing or stealing. In Arya's world, if she took the treasure, she would be borrowing it. As for whether she would return it or not, she had never considered it. Who said that one had to return something borrowed? The green-robed man felt a headache when he heard the messy thoughts of the 2 little fellows. Arya pouted when she saw that the green-robed man did not agree. She looked at Xiaobai and shrugged. "Brother Yang is very wary of us now. What should we do?" Lil White blinked, then pointed its little paw at Yi Xian in the distance. Arya thought for a moment and said, you can have that thought. Yi Xian was speechless. The green-robed man looked at Elder Mu and smiled, I'll take this little fellow for a walk. You go ahead. Elder Mu hesitated for a moment and nodded, call me if you need anything. The green-robed man nodded, all right. Elder Mu cupped his fists and retreated. The green-robed man led Yi Xian and the others into the distance. Along the way, the green-robed man smiled and said, are you curious about this place? Yi Xian nodded. The green-robed man smiled and said, this is the Heaven-Opening Clan. Do you remember that I once told you that there is a bloodline that is very special, even more special than the immortal bloodline? Yi Xian nodded, is it the Heaven-Opening Clan? The green-robed man nodded, Heaven-Opening Bloodline. It is a rather special bloodline. Of course, it is not as powerful as our Yang family's crazy demon bloodline. Yi Xian was speechless. The green-robed man continued, their holy land is very interesting. It is a place that specializes in cultivation and has a special cultivation method. If you can cultivate there for a period of time, your strength will definitely improve greatly. Yi Xian was a little curious, Dad, what kind of clan is the Heaven-Opening Clan? The green-robed man smiled, pioneers. Yi Xian frowned slightly, pioneers? The green-robed man nodded, this clan is a little interesting. Their ancestors' goal was to lead their clansmen into the boundless universe, in other words, to explore. As he spoke, he looked around, do you know what this place is? Yi Xian shook his head. The green-robed man smiled, the Heaven-Opening Realm, a world far away from your universe. Although this place is not as special as the alternate dimension, it is not simple either. Yi Xian asked, how is it not simple? The green-robed man smiled, do you know why the Heaven-Opening Clan did not continue to explore and instead stayed here? Yi Xian shook his head. The green-robed man smiled, because there are many unexplored ancient ruins in the deepest part of the mountain range. The Heaven-Opening Clan stayed here to eat these ancient ruins. However, even after exploring for hundreds of thousands of years, they have only explored less than 1/10 of it. Yi Xian blinked. Dad, have you been there before? The green-robed man laughed, yes, I have. Yi Xian asked, what is there? The green-robed man smiled, if you are curious, you can go there yourself in the future. That place does not attract me. As he said this, he paused, then said, if you go, remember to tell me my name. Otherwise, I am afraid you will be gone. Yi Xian. Chapter 1665. A Relic. Yi Xian looked into the distance. He had decided to make a trip there. A relic that the heaven-splitting race valued was definitely not ordinary. The green-robed man glanced at Yi Xian and smiled. Young man, this world is huge. It's not just the other-dimensional people. You, then, he shook his head. Forget it. Let's not talk about this. Yi Xian felt helpless. Is there anything you can't say? The green-robed man smiled. You're too weak now. You won't understand even if I tell you. Yi Xian said seriously, Father, were you young? The green-robed man was stunned. Of course. Yi Xian asked again, were you weak when you were young? The green-robed man did not say anything. Yi Xian smiled and did not say anything. The green-robed man shook his head and smiled. I'm not trying to discourage you. It's just that there are many things that you shouldn't come into contact with given your strength. Yi Xian nodded. All right. The green-robed man smiled. You're not going to continue asking? If you really want to know, I can tell you too. Yi Xian shook his head. I only want to improve myself now. The green-robed man nodded and smiled. All right. At this moment, a woman suddenly showed up not far away from Yi Xian and the others. The lady was wearing a long white robe. Her long hair draped over her shoulders and her hands were hidden in her sleeves. Beautiful. That was Yi Xian's first thought. The lady's skin was very white, especially her eyes. They were big and watery, as if they could suck people in. She was a lady that one would never forget at a glance. The lady looked at the green-robed man and bowed. Senior. At that moment, Elder Mu also appeared. Elder Mu cupped his fists at the green-robed man. Brother Yang, this is Mulyan. She came out earlier after learning that you wanted to use the sacred land. The green-robed man smiled and looked at Mulyan. Thank you. Mulyan bowed again. I'm fated to meet you today. I hope you can give me some pointers. I'll be very grateful. The azure-robed man sized up Mulyan and smiled, I can't guide you. Hearing this, Amu Lien was slightly taken aback, and then her expression dimmed. The azure-robed man smiled and said, however, I can let you feel what it means to be powerful. Mulyan immediately bowed. Senior, please make your move. The green-robed man laughed heartily, what a smart little girl. She's as outstanding as my son. Yi Xian was a little embarrassed. Dad, although I think I'm very outstanding, you still have to be tactful in front of outsiders. I also want to save face. The green-robed man laughed and said, outstanding is outstanding, what's the point of being tactful? Let me tell you, your father is the most outstanding man in the world, and you are the second most outstanding man in the world. The two of us are the most outstanding men in the entire universe. Everyone, Arya suddenly pulled Xiaobai aside. She looked up at the sky, as if she didn't know these two. Elder Mu looked a little embarrassed. This brother Yang was good at everything, but sometimes he was shameless. Mulyan glanced at Yi Xian, but she didn't say anything. Meanwhile, the green-robed man walked over to Mulyan, and he sized her up. He smiled and said, Miss, watch carefully. As he spoke, he suddenly swung his sword. The sword stabbed straight at the center of Mulyan's brows. It was a very simple strike. There was no sword chi. There was no sword intent. There wasn't even a trace of sword light. However, it was such a simple strike that caused Mulyan's expression to change drastically. She wanted to resist, but there was a thought in her mind at this moment. Unbeatable. This strike is unbeatable. Death is certain. Mulyan slowly closed her eyes. The sword stopped half an inch away from the center of Mulyan's brows. The green-robed man sheathed his sword and smiled, but he didn't say anything. A short moment later, Mulyan opened her eyes and bowed slightly. Thank you, Senior. The green-robed man glanced at Yi Xian, and then he said, Miss, my son might not be very familiar with your sacred grounds. I wonder if you can take him there to familiarize him with it. Yi Xian, Mulyan glanced at Yi Xian, and nodded slightly. Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors above, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From this moment onward, Yi Xian's position as crown prince shall be removed, and Yi Lang shall succeed him. The speaker was an old man in a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi clan's elders. Why? At this moment, a somewhat timid voice suddenly resounded in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. The little girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian from his position, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall, and said timidly, "Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is a crown prince, why did you remove his title for no reason?" The Great Elder looked coldly at Yi Ling. "This is a matter of the clan, why are you interrupting? Leave." Yi Ling was obviously afraid, and did not dare to look at the Great Elder, but she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She once again bowed to the elders on both sides. "Elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting for the clan, and his life is uncertain. But the clan is using a groundless excuse to remove his position as crown prince. This is really unfair. Impudent." The Great Elder suddenly raged, "Whether he is removed or not, it is not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this moment, the newly appointed Crown Prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. "You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The Great Elder said coldly, "Then flog 30 times. Soon, 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists, and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now he is fighting for the clan, but the clan is so unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the newly appointed Crown Prince Yi Lang, and he knew that this was his chance to show off. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the position of Crown Prince, and it is everyone's wish. What are you shouting for?" With that, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. But she did not cry, and just covered her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard, and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "I'm Zhang Mu, greeting the Crown Prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the Crown Prince, I will need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed, and hurriedly bowed deeply. "I will go through fire and water for the Crown Prince, and I will do anything for you." Yi Lang nodded slightly. "Drag him out. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall, so don't show any mercy, understand?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. Immediately, he grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu seemed to have seen something, and he suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, and the robe was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. This person was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from the South Mountain. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The Great Elder narrowed his eyes, and his expression was frighteningly dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang, and was about to speak, when Yi Xian suddenly leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pang! Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him, and snarled, "Your man." As he spoke, he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, "Prince, save me." Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's appearance, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed out. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu, and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pang! Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi clan's elders. Why? At this time, a timid voice rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall, and said timidly, "Great elder, my brother Yi Xian is a prince, why did you discard him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan, why are you interrupting? Leave." Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the great elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, "Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince." Impudent! The great elder suddenly raged. "Discard him or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. "You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The great elder replied coldly, "Then flog her 30 times. Soon, 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now, he is risking his life for the clan. The clan is so unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the position of prince. What are you yelling about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap! A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry. She only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the prince, I will need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed. He hurriedly bowed deeply. "This subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the prince." Yi Lang nodded. "Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't hold back. Understood?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu seemed to see something and suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe. The robe was tattered and covered in blood. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a sinister smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, his face dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian was like a ferocious tiger leaping in front of him. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pang! Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man. How dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him and snarled, "Your man." As he spoke, he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, "Prince, save me." Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being cut by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pang! Chapter 1666. At that moment, Yi Xian was still cultivating. Cultivating like crazy. Under the guidance and sparring of the virtual figure, his reaction and speed could be said to have improved tremendously. Before long, Yi Xian activated the difficult mode. The difficult mode was at least 10 times more terrifying than the easy mode. In the beginning, Yi Xian was beaten so violently that he did not even have the strength to fight back. However, Yi Xian was gradually able to dodge. However, he could only dodge. He had no chance to fight back. Mulyan stood quietly outside the cave. She had been watching Yi Xian cultivate. At that moment, Elder Mu appeared beside Mulyan. Elder Mu glanced at Yi Xian and asked, "What do you think of him?" Mulyan replied, "Excellent." Elder Mu smiled slightly. "Mulyan, you should understand Sect Master Yang's meaning, right?" Mulyan remained silent. Elder Mu asked softly, "Do you know Sect Leader Yang's background?" Mulyan remained silent. Elder Mu said, "He's the founder of the Sword Alliance." The Sword Alliance. Mulyan's pupils constricted. She turned to look at Elder Mu. "Are you sure?" Elder Mu smiled bitterly. "Of course." Mulyan slowly closed her eyes. No wonder he's so powerful. The Sword Alliance was the Sword Alliance. It was an alliance formed by swordsmen. It was a very mysterious force. Everyone in it was a swordsman, and they were all top-notch swordsmen. These swordsmen came from various worlds. Moreover, these swordsmen's identities were very special and mysterious. Usually, they could be the emperor of a world or a supreme overlord of a world. In short, it was a very terrifying force. Its influence was unimaginable. Although the Heaven-Splitting clan was powerful, they were extremely weak in front of this force. The Heaven-Splitting clan did not resist, and the green-robed man tried to matchmake Yi Xian and Mulyan. Instead, they were secretly delighted. If the Heaven-Splitting clan could form a marriage alliance with the Sword Alliance, it would definitely be great news for the Heaven-Splitting clan. At that moment, Mulyan suddenly said softly, "Feelings should be pure." With that, she turned around and left. Elder Mu smiled bitterly in his heart. Although he also wanted Mulyan and Yi Xian to be together, this mainly depended on Mulyan herself. Clearly, Mulyan did not mean that. Elder Mu sighed softly and turned to leave. 1 month passed. At this moment, Yi Xian was already able to adapt to this difficult mode of training. His current reaction and speed were at least 10 times faster than before. 10 times, what kind of concept was that? Now, even if he didn't use the sword drawing technique, ordinary half-step concept powerhouses wouldn't be a match for him. Before long, Yi Xian activated the Hell difficulty mode. As expected, he was immediately beaten up. But it was much better than before, because he could still dodge now. After all, his body is at the intent realm, yet this fellow is even stronger than me? Meanwhile, the phantom suddenly vanished on the spot. Yi Xian immediately took a step forward and smashed his fist forward. However, the phantom didn't go head-on against him and suddenly stopped. Bang! Yi Xian's fist struck nothing but air. Meanwhile, his expression changed drastically, and he swiftly turned around. As soon as he did, he instantly felt sharp pain come from his stomach, and then his figure was blasted flying. At the instant that his figure flew through the air, he suddenly felt his right hand being grabbed, and then his body was pulled forward by a formidable force. After that, he felt sharp pain come from his stomach again. Pooh! A mouthful of blood essence sprayed from Yi Xian's mouth. In the next moment, the phantom's fist smashed against his throat. Bang! Yi Xian instantly flew over 30 kilometers away. At this moment, Yi Xian was slightly dazed. How could this fellow be so terrifying? Meanwhile, the phantom's voice resounded in his mind, too many distracting thoughts. Too many distracting thoughts. Yi Xian fell silent. He knew that the phantom was pointing out his flaws. When fighting another, one couldn't have too many distracting thoughts, and one had to concentrate on fighting the enemy. Meanwhile, the phantom vanished on the spot. Yi Xian immediately charged forward. In next to no time, numerous explosions resounded in the surroundings. Both of them were fighting with their bare fists. Every punch struck flesh. There weren't any flashy movements, and they relied purely on their physical strength and consciousness. In terms of physical strength, he didn't lose by much, but in terms of consciousness, he was completely suppressed. However, it wasn't that he didn't have the strength to fight. They collided madly. Needless to say, the feeling of every punch hitting flesh was truly satisfying. Yi Xian vented his strength madly, and every single punch he executed was extremely carefree. Moreover, because their strength was too formidable, the entire world started to shatter. Fortunately, the world was able to repair itself. Outside the cave, Amulian hadn't left. She wanted to understand Yi Xian's strength. Right at this moment, Elder Mu suddenly appeared before Amulian. Mulian, that person from the Wen clan has arrived. Why don't you go receive him? Amulian spoke softly, so soon? Elder Mu smiled, he probably can't wait any longer. Not only the Wen clan, but that person from the Tian sect should also be arriving soon. With that said, he paused, then continued, I heard that the person from the Wen clan is somewhat domineering. I'm afraid he'll be difficult to get along with. Mulian nodded, it's fine. With that, she turned and left. On the streets of Kai Tian City, Arya was strolling blindly with Little White. The two of them only played all day. They went wherever they had fun. As for cultivation, Arya didn't really cultivate. Anyway, being with Little White every day was equivalent to cultivation. Right at this moment, Arya suddenly stopped in her tracks. She turned around and looked not far away. There was a very lively restaurant there. Of course, she smelled the fragrance. Arya blinked, let's go and have a taste. Little White nodded. Arya walked into the restaurant with Little White. As soon as they entered, a waiter immediately greeted them, Sir, what would you like to eat? Arya walked to the side and sat down, then said, Do you have human flesh? The waiter's expression froze. At this moment, Little White patted Aria's shoulder lightly. Master doesn't allow you to eat human flesh. It's meat. Aria pursed her lips and looked at the waiter. I'm here. Bring out the best dishes here. The waiter glanced at Aria. Young lady, do you have crystals? Aria glanced at the waiter. Do you think I'll eat and dash? The waiter smiled. No, no. It's just that we have to pay first when we eat here. When Aria heard that, she immediately flew into a rage. Who pays first when they eat? If it doesn't taste good, do I have to pay too? Hearing that, everyone present looked at Aria. The waiter looked at Aria. Young lady, are you here to look for trouble? Aria suddenly took out a crystal and placed it in front of the waiter. Is this enough? With the appearance of this crystal, the entire hall was instantly filled with boundless spiritual qi. Everyone's eyes lit up at once. What kind of supreme-grade crystal was this? The waiter said with a trembling voice, This is enough. As he spoke, he took the crystal. Please wait a moment, esteemed guest. I'll go arrange it right away. With that, he turned and ran away. Inside the hall, everyone present was looking at Aria meaningfully. Aria picked up a pair of chopsticks. At this moment, Little White pointed at the people beside her. Aria said calmly, they want to rob us. Little White blinked and then waved its little paws a few times. Aria shook her head, they're too poor. There's no point in robbing them. Little White hurriedly nodded, she could not sense any treasure. Although the people present had some crooked thoughts, no one dared to make a move. After all, no one knew this little girl's identity. What if her background was not simple? The risk was too great. At this moment, a surprised voice suddenly sounded from outside the door, Eh? It's the spirit ancestor. The spirit ancestor. Aria turned around and saw a woman standing outside the door. The woman was wearing a tight-fitting robe and had a small braid. Judging from her age, she seemed to be only 17 or 18 years old. Behind the woman, there were two old men. When she saw Little White, the woman's eyes lit up. She took a step forward and arrived directly in front of Aria and Little White. The woman looked at Little White with undisguised greed and passion in her eyes. It really is the spirit ancestor. As she spoke, she looked at Aria. Are you from the Heaven-Splitting clan? Aria shook her head. Hearing this, the woman's lips curled up slightly. I want this little fellow. Do you have any objections? Aria looked at the woman. What if I do? The woman's smile widened. Then I'll beat you to death. Dead people have no objections. Chapter 1667. Snatch. At this moment, the woman's intention was very obvious. Little White blinked and continued to lick the candied haws. She did not panic at all. Aria did not panic, nor was she angry. She took out a candied haw and licked it. Brother Yang said that robbing is wrong. Brother Yang had instructed that if anyone came looking for trouble, they should be reformed first. If they could not be reformed, they would be cremated. The woman smiled and said, Did your brother Yang tell you that right and wrong are decided by fists? Aria glanced at the woman. You are breaking the law. The woman laughed. Breaking the law? Then, she shook her head. What a cute little girl. Aria looked at Little White. Little White blinked and pointed at the storage ring on the woman's finger. Her intention was very obvious. There was a treasure. Aria licked the candied haw and thought to herself, if I just do it like this. Brother Yang will definitely think that I bullied this woman first. I have to let this woman make the first move, and then I can retaliate. In this case, I am defending myself. Thinking of this, she looked at the woman. Are you really going to rob me? The woman blinked her eyes and said with a smile, I really want to snatch it. Aria nodded, then can you punch me first? The woman was a little curious. Why? Arya said seriously, there is no why. Go ahead. The woman smiled. I might beat you to death. Arya glared at the woman. Woman, are you trying to make me anxious? How can you be so long-winded when robbing? Can you be more straightforward? The woman looked at Arya, and her smile gradually turned cold. At this moment, the old man behind the woman suddenly said, Miss, this girl might not be simple. The woman smiled. It's fine as long as she is not from the Heaven Opening clan. A spirit ancestor can't be let off. As she spoke, she looked at Arya. Without any nonsense, she directly pointed her finger at Arya. Arya didn't dodge and let the finger touch her eyebrows. Boom! The entire restaurant turned into ashes. However, the woman's expression changed. Because the little girl in front of her was completely fine. Arya blinked and said, You started it. As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly grabbed the woman's right hand, causing the woman's expression to change greatly. She suddenly clenched her right hand and a powerful force swept out from her right hand. However, when that force blasted onto Arya's body, Arya didn't move an inch and was completely unharmed. At this time, Arya suddenly pulled. Boom! The woman's right arm was torn off by Arya. Meanwhile, the old man behind the woman spoke furiously, How dare you? As his voice fell, he struck Arya with his palm. Arya raised her hand and punched. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the old man's right arm was shattered, and he was sent flying into the horizon. The expressions of the one-armed woman and the remaining old man instantly became extremely unsightly when they witnessed this scene. He had underestimated the enemy. This little girl was actually so terrifying. Arya opened her palm, and there was a storage ring in her palm. She had taken it from the arm of the one-armed woman. Arya glanced at the one-armed woman. Now let's talk about compensation. The one-armed woman stared fixedly at Arya. Compensation. Arya said seriously, Of course we have to compensate. You bullied us and caused serious psychological and spiritual damage to us. Is it too much for us to ask you for compensation? Is it too much? The one-armed woman's expression was slightly unsightly, and she looked coldly at Arya. I underestimated you. However, do you think you've won? As she spoke, she suddenly clenched her left hand. In an instant, the space around Arya warped. At this moment, Arya suddenly blasted out with her fist. Boom! The space around Arya shattered, and the one-armed woman was sent flying 1,000 feet away. After she stopped, the one-armed woman looked at Arya in disbelief. You are so strong. Arya stood up and walked towards the one-armed woman with little white. Arya's expression was slightly cold, and she was very angry. Not only did this woman not admit her mistake and apologize, she even wanted to hit me. Is there no law? Is there no justice? The consequences of Arya's anger are very serious. At this moment, Elder Mu and Mulyan suddenly appeared before Arya and Little White. Elder Mu hurriedly said, Miss Arya, please show mercy. Arya blinked her eyes. Why? Elder Mu smiled bitterly. Miss Arya, they are from the Wen clan. They are our distinguished guests. Arya shook her head. They want to snatch Little White. Little White. Elder Mu glanced at the little fellow on Arya's shoulder and sighed in his heart. He looked at the one-armed woman. Miss Wen Xian, since you have entered the city, why didn't you inform us? The one-armed woman called Wen Xian smiled. Uncle Mu, we just wanted to take a walk first. As she spoke, she glanced at Arya and Little White. I didn't expect to meet them. I saw that the little fellow was very cute, so I wanted to tease her. I didn't expect that little girl to attack me directly. Hearing this, Arya frowned. Are you trying to distort the truth? When Xian looked at Arya and smiled. Little girl, you were the one who attacked first. Why are you saying that I'm distorting the truth? Arya squinted her eyes and slowly clenched her right hand. At this moment, Elder Mu suddenly said, "Miss Wen Xian, Miss Arya, this must be a misunderstanding. Why don't we shake hands and make up?" Arya suddenly looked at Elder Mu and said angrily, "What misunderstanding? She was the one who wanted to snatch Little White." Elder Mu frowned slightly. "Miss Arya." Arya suddenly pointed at Elder Mu angrily, "Shut up, or I'll beat you to death. How dare you?" At this moment, a black-clothed man behind Elder Mu suddenly walked out. "How dare you be rude to the patriarch?" As soon as he spoke, a powerful aura suddenly crushed towards Arya. Arya's expression immediately became ferocious. She charged forward, and the black-clothed man's head was directly punched by Arya before he could react. Bang! The black-clothed man's head exploded, and blood splattered. All the spectators were stunned when they witnessed this scene. Wen Xian was slightly stunned as well. She didn't expect this little girl to be so hot-tempered and attack just like that. Of course, this was a good thing. The corners of Wen Xian's mouth curled up slightly. Elder Mu's expression became extremely ugly as well. He didn't expect Arya to attack just like that. At this moment, Wen Xian suddenly smiled. "Uncle Mu, did you see that? This wild girl has a bad temper. She doesn't respect the heaven-splitting clan at all." Elder Mu glanced at Wen Xian with a cold expression. "Miss Wen Xian, don't play that trick in front of the old man." Wen Xian smiled and didn't speak. Elder Mu looked at Arya, and she walked directly towards Wen Xian. Obviously, she wanted to beat this woman to death. Elder Mu hurriedly said, "Miss Arya, I've already notified Brother Yang. He'll be here soon." "Brother Yang." Arya stopped and was about to speak when the green-clothed man suddenly appeared. Elder Mu heaved a sigh of relief when he saw the green-clothed man. The green-clothed man looked at Arya. "Tell me what happened." Arya told him what had happened. After that, she glanced at the green-clothed man. "Brother Yang, I want to beat her to death." The green-clothed man turned to look at Wen Xian. Wen Xian smiled. "So you have a backer. No wonder you're so arrogant. Have you heard of the Wen clan?" Meanwhile, Elder Mu said, "Brother Yang, she's from the Wen clan. I wonder if you can give me some face and let this matter go." The green-clothed man looked at Elder Mu and smiled. "It's clearly her fault. Why should I give you face?" As he spoke, he looked at Arya. "Don't kill her, cripple her first." Arya grinned when she heard this, and then she turned around and charged at Wen Xian. Elder Mu's face instantly turned pale when he witnessed this scene. In the distance, Wen Xian's expression changed drastically when she saw Arya charging at her. She directly crushed a transmission talisman, charged forward, and slapped her palm towards Arya. Bang! Along with an explosion, Wen Xian's left arm was directly shattered into pieces, and then her figure was blasted flying once more. This time, she flew over 1 kilometer away. She was instantly killed. The old man who followed Wen Xian glared angrily at Yi Xian. "Do you know who she is? She's the eldest young miss of the Wen clan. How dare you?" Arya suddenly charged at the old man, and the latter didn't even have time to react before she smashed him into nothingness. She was instantly killed. Seeing this scene, Wen Xian, who had just stood up in the distance, suddenly changed her expression. Only now did she realize that this little girl's strength was extremely terrifying, and she was absolutely no match for her. Arya walked slowly towards Wen Xian. Elder Mu was about to say something, but Mulyan stopped him. In the distance, Wen Xian stared fixedly at Arya. "Do you know the Wen clan?" Arya shook her head. "No." Wen Xian turned around to look at the green-clothed man. "If I die here today, your 10 clans will be annihilated, 10 clans will be annihilated." The green-clothed man smiled when he heard this. "Arya, don't kill her. Cripple her first. Area directly vanished on the spot. In the distance, Wen Xian's expression changed drastically. She was about to retreat when Area directly punched her in the stomach. Bang! Wen Xian's eyes opened wide, and her body split open. Every inch of her bones was shattered. Area withdrew her fist, and Wen Xian instantly fell to the ground. She didn't die, but all the bones in her body were shattered by Area's punch. Area clapped her hands, and then turned to look at the green-clothed man. "Brother Yang, why don't you let me kill her?" The green-clothed man said indifferently, "I want you to kill her in front of the experts of the Wen clan." Wen Xian, Elder Mu smiled bitterly when he heard the green-clothed man. "Brother Yang, you've gone too far." At this moment, an extremely terrifying pressure suddenly appeared in the distant sky. The next moment, an angry roar came from the starry sky. "Who dares to touch the people of the Wen clan? Who dares?" The voice was like thunder, and it shook the sky. P.S. I just came out. Chapter 1668. Elder Mu's face turned pale when he heard this angry shout. He knew that the Wenren clan was finished. The reason why he had pleaded for mercy time and time again was mainly because the Heaven Opening clan and the Wen clan were on good terms. Of course, the main reason was that he did not want Wen Xian to die there, as it would very likely cause the Wen clan to become hostile. However, he hadn't expected that the Wen clan would court death like this. He knew that the Wen clan was really finished this time. Even though he didn't know the green-clothed man very well, he knew the green-clothed man's temper. This matter would definitely not end peacefully. A huge vortex suddenly appeared in the sky, and then a middle-aged man walked out from within it. Wen Tian. It was none other than the patriarch of the Wen clan. Elder Mu's face sank when he saw Wen Tian. This old fellow actually came personally. In the distance, Wen Xian was overjoyed. "Grandpa, help me." Wen Tian glanced at Wen Xian, and his face turned gloomy when he saw her miserable state. He turned to look at the green-clothed man. "You did this?" The green-clothed man nodded. "I did." Wen Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. Suddenly, Elder Mu spoke abruptly. "Brother Wen Tian, this is a misunderstanding." Wen Tian was furious. "Misunderstanding? Geezer Mu, my granddaughter was bullied to such a state, yet you're telling me it's a misunderstanding?" As he spoke, he pointed at the green-clothed man. "This person and his entire clan must die today. Old man won't give face to anyone." Elder Mu was dumbfounded. Wen Tian turned to look at Yi Xian with killing intent in his eyes. "Die." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly smashed his fist forward. Bang! The entire sky-split city seethed as if it was about to be vaporized. It was absolutely powerful. Not far from the green-robed man, Area was about to make a move, but at this time, the green-robed man smiled and said, "Let me." As soon as he finished speaking, the sword in his hand suddenly flew forward. "Ohm!" A sword howl suddenly shot into the sky. Hiss! A ray of sword light tore through the sky, and the powerful force that Wen Tian released was instantly shattered. In the next moment, a sword was pressed against the center of Wen Tian's forehead. The surroundings instantly fell silent. Was it over? Down below, Wen Xian's face was full of disbelief, as if she had lost her soul. How could it be? How could it be? In the sky, Wen Tian was stunned as well. I've lost? He was defeated just like that? At this moment, his mind was in a mess. Elder Mu took a deep look at the green-clothed man. He realized that the green-clothed man was much stronger than he had imagined. It was too terrifying. Although this Wen Tian wasn't a concept powerhouse, it could be said that he was infinitely close to a concept powerhouse, but he was defeated just like that. At this moment, the man in green suddenly looked at Area. "Kill that woman." Arya rushed to Wen Xian. Wen Xian's face changed. She was about to say something when Arya kicked her head. Bang! Wen Xian's heart almost flew out of her chest. This kick directly annihilated both his soul and body. The green-robed man raised his head and looked at Wen Tian, who was in the sky. So I did something to your Wen family. What are you going to do about it? Wen Tian stared at the green-robed man. Who the hell are you? The green-robed man smiled, I'm Arya's brother Yang. As he spoke, he walked to Arya and rubbed her little head. Remember, if anyone bullies you in the future, no matter who it is, beat them to death. Brother Yang will support you. Arya grinned and said nothing. The green-robed man looked at Wen Tian. Your Wen family wanted to steal my little fellow. How do you think we should settle this? Wen Tian stared at the green-robed man. Your Excellency, are you really going to go to the extreme? Go to the extreme. The green-robed man smiled, didn't you bully me first? Why is it that I'm going to go to the extreme? Wen Tian stared at the green-robed man. Your Excellency is very strong, but my Wen family is not to be trifled with, Qi. At this moment, the sword between Wen Tian's eyebrows suddenly pierced into his brain. Blood splattered everywhere. Wen Tian's eyes were wide open. He was completely suppressed. The green-robed man looked at Wen Tian. Come, call for help. Call for help. Wen Tian roared angrily, you've gone too far. As he spoke, he opened his palm. A black token suddenly soared into the sky and went deep into the starry sky. Boom! The entire starry sky was boiling. Below, Elder Mu said in a deep voice, summon the ancestor. As he spoke, he shook his head and sighed. He did not expect this to happen. Originally, as long as Wen Xian apologized and admitted her mistake, this matter would definitely be resolved. However, not only did that woman not apologize, she even slandered Arya. Wasn't she courting death? Actually, there was still a chance. If Wen Tian admitted his mistake and apologized in time, there would still be room for negotiation. But now, there was really no room for negotiation. Mulyan shook her head. How did Wen Tian become the head of the family? Elder Mu shook his head slightly. It's not that he's stupid. All these years, his Wen family basically had no opponents. Under such circumstances, they naturally became arrogant. If it was an ordinary person, today's outcome would be completely different. Mulyan raised her head and looked deep into the starry sky. There, a white-haired old man appeared. The ancestor of the Wen family. A true expert of the comprehension realm. Although it was only a wisp of soul, it still gave people a sense of oppression. Countless young experts of the comprehension realm. In the sky, Wen Tian immediately bowed respectfully. Greetings, ancestor. The white-haired old man looked around blankly. Finally, he looked at Wen Tian. What's the matter? Wen Tian immediately pointed at the green-robed man and said ferociously, this person wants to destroy my Wen family. The white-haired old man looked at the green-robed man. When he saw the green-robed man, his pupils suddenly constricted. You, the green-robed man smiled. What about me? The white-haired old man stared at the green-robed man. After a moment, he said in a deep voice, why can't I sense your realm? The green-robed man smiled. Because you're weak. The white-haired old man was speechless. Elder Mu and Mulyan were also a little confused. Weak? Experts of the comprehension realm were weak? In the sky, Wen Tian suddenly said angrily, Bullsh *T, you. The white-haired old man suddenly looked at Wen Tian. Shut up. Shut up. Hearing that, Wen Tian was instantly stunned. The white-haired old man looked at Wen Tian coldly. Are you AF *King Pig? Wen Tian was a little confused. Ancestor, you, the white-haired old man took a deep breath. This old man is going to die because of you unfilial descendants. This old man is 2F** King Hard. As he said that, he said angrily, you big idiot, this senior has already surpassed the comprehension realm. Surpassed the comprehension realm. Hearing that, Wen Tian felt like he was struck by lightning. He was completely stunned in the air. The white-haired old man looked at the green-robed man with a complicated expression. I never thought that after so many years, someone could actually surpass the comprehension realm. At this moment, Wen Tian suddenly roared. Impossible. It's impossible for him to surpass the comprehension realm. Even you didn't surpass the comprehension realm back then. How could he? Idiot. The white-haired old man suddenly scolded. Your ancestor can't surpass the comprehension realm. Does that mean others can't as well? You've cultivated to the half-step comprehension realm. Why are you so stupid? Don't you know that there's always someone better than you out there? Wen Tian muttered as if he had lost his soul. Impossible. It's impossible for him to surpass the comprehension realm. In the sky, the white-haired old man shook his head and sighed. He looked at the green-robed man. You can do whatever you want to him, but please let the Wen clan go. Please. The green-robed man casually waved his hand and Tian Wen was directly killed by a sword ray. The green-robed man turned to look at Arya. Have you calmed down? Arya nodded. The green-robed man laughed. Then let's go. As he said that, he took Arya's hand and left with Xiao Bai. In the sky, the white-haired old man suddenly said, Sir, how did you surpass the comprehension realm? Please tell me, please. He had fallen because he couldn't take a step further. It could be said that he regretted it for the rest of his life. In the distance, the green-robed man didn't even turn his head. I broke through while playing around. The white-haired old man's expression froze. After a moment, he shook his head and smiled. Then, he gradually disappeared. He was already a dead person. Although he was curious about how the green-robed man had broken through, he understood that it was meaningless to him. Soon, the white-haired old man completely disappeared. In the field, Elder Mu sighed softly. He was somewhat disappointed. Mulyan suddenly said, Patriarch, how did you get to know sect leader Yang? Elder Mu smiled. I can only say that it was a coincidence. Of course, I didn't know he was so strong at that time. As he said that, he shook his head and smiled. He's not just strong. In the distance, Arya carefully glanced at the green-robed man. Brother Yang, are you angry? The green-robed man shook his head. I'm not angry. Arya immediately heaved a sigh of relief. The green-robed man gently rubbed Arya's little head and smiled. In the future, remember, we don't bully others, but we also don't let others bully us. Understand? Arya nodded. I'll remember. The green-robed man smiled. He glanced to the right. I wonder how that little guy's cultivation is going. Arya suddenly said, Are you really not going to take little Xuanzi with you? The man with the soft voice smiled. Don't worry, I won't really ignore him. Arya nodded slightly and didn't say anything else. The green-robed man raised his head and looked into the depths of the starry sky. He softly said, That alien race is getting more and more restless. In the world of the 9th floor, Yi Xian was still cultivating crazily. The more he fought, the more excited he got. This feeling of punching flesh was too refreshing. Under the guidance of the virtual figure, his strength had also improved by leaps and bounds, especially his physical strength. His current physical strength was even stronger than before he had come in. About half a month later, the phantom that was repelled by Yi Xian suddenly stopped. It's done. After saying that, he directly disappeared. In the same place, Yi Xian took a deep breath. Spirit and soul. As soon as he said that, a phantom appeared in front of him. Difficulty. Difficulty. Yi Xian hesitated. Hell difficulty. As soon as he said that, he felt as if his head was hit by a heavy blow. Then, his mind went blank and he fell straight down. Chapter 1669. Mental Strength. Yi Xian laid on the ground, his entire person in a daze. He was attacked by a mental strength just now. Furthermore, it was a very horrifying mental strength. At this time, that phantom appeared in front of Yi Xian. At the same time, a voice sounded out in Yi Xian's mind. Mental strength, extremely weak. Extremely weak. Clearly, this was talking about him. Yi Xian was silent, his expression solemn. The current him suddenly had some lingering fear. If he encountered a mental strength powerhouse like this phantom, he absolutely would not have any chance at all. Because the other party did not target his physical body at all, but directly targeted his divine soul. This time, Yi Xian rested for a full 4 hours before he recovered to his senses. And after recovering, he directly changed to the easy mode. With his current divine soul, he simply could not withstand this kind of regional difficulty mode's divine soul attack. After changing to the easy mode, he still found it hard to bear. But fortunately, it was not that miserable. At this very moment, Yi Xian also discovered his most fatal flaw, that was that his divine soul was not strong enough. Compared to the average person, it was actually not weak. But compared to this kind of powerhouse who specialized in cultivating the divine soul, that was much weaker. In the following time, Yi Xian only did one thing every day, that was to cultivate the divine soul frenziedly. And under this phantom's guidance, his divine soul also advanced by leaps and bounds. Just like this, roughly 2 months later, not only did Yi Xian's divine soul obtain a great enhancement, he even learned some mental attacks. One had to know, this phantom who taught him was once a concept powerhouse. One could say that the current him, apart from concept powerhouses, he had no opponents at all. And even if it was a concept powerhouse, he also had the strength to fight. Sword drawing technique. This was the rank leapfrogging divine skill that his old man taught him. The current him had not tried using the sword drawing technique yet, but according to his estimation, the lowest he could overlap was more than 100. Regardless of whether it was the sword drawing technique or the physical body and divine soul, he had to pursue the limits now, then break through the limits. Another month passed, that phantom suddenly stopped. Pass. When his voice faded, he slowly disappeared. Yi Xian took a deep breath. He lay on the ground, his forehead full of sweat. The collision of divine souls was too terrifying. It was even more terrifying than a normal battle. A moment of carelessness could result in the destruction of one's soul. This directly disregarded the physical body. This caused him to feel a lingering fear. His mortal body could be said to be extremely terrifying. He could stand there and let a half-step concept powerhouse hit him without any problems. But, if he were to encounter a divine soul powerhouse, he would likely be instantly killed. Of course, there were very few powerhouses at this level. At the very least, they had to be powerhouses at the concept level to be able to do this. But in this universe, there were basically no concept powerhouses. In reality, he had always had a question in his heart, and it was that intent realm experts were said to be immortal, so why did all the intent realm experts from all those years ago disappear? Could he have been killed by someone? There was no answer. After resting for a while, Yi Xian got up and left. It was over. As soon as he left the cave, he saw Amulian. Amulian glanced at Yi Xian. Is it over? Yi Xian nodded and looked around. Miss Amulian, where's my father? Mulyan looked at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, I'm going to the ancient ruins. Are you interested in going with me? Ancient ruins. Yi Xian was slightly startled, and then he said, Can I go? Mulyan nodded. Of course. But it's a bit dangerous. Yi Xian was slightly curious. What's over there? Mulyan shook her head. Some unknown dangers. Yi Xian said, I mean, what treasures are over there? Mulyan glanced at Yi Xian. It's also unknown. Yi Xian frowned. At this moment, Mulyan suddenly pointed behind Yi Xian. This special cultivation method was obtained from over there. This chapter is not finished. Please continue to the next page. And because of this cultivation method, the overall strength of my heaven battling race has improved by leaps and bounds. Yi Xian said softly, in that case, there must be a lot of good things over there. Mulyan nodded. Yes. Do you want to go? Yi Xian smiled, yes. Mulyan nodded. Then let's go. Yi Xian suddenly said, Wait. I'm going to take someone with me. Mulyan gazed at Yi Xian. Your father? Yi Xian smiled and didn't say anything. He just vanished on the spot. A short moment later, Yi Xian appeared by a lake, and the green-clothed man, Xiao Bai, and Arya were there. The green-clothed man sized up Yi Xian. How is it? Yi Xian smiled, a huge improvement. The green-clothed man smiled, that's good. How many sword drawing techniques can you overlap now? Yi Xian said, at least 100. Can 100 overlapped sword drawing techniques kill intent? The green-clothed man thought for a moment, and then he said, it shouldn't be a big problem. However, it might be difficult if they're on guard against it. Because your current sword drawing speed isn't fast enough. Yi Xian hurriedly asked, how do I make it faster? The green-clothed man shook his head, I can only take it slow. I can't rush it. Yi Xian nodded. He thought for a moment and said, Father, I want to head to that ruin. The green-clothed man glanced at Yi Xian, you want me to go with you? Yi Xian smiled, yes. The green-clothed man shook his head, it's very boring. Yi Xian hurriedly said, then ask Arya and Xiao Bai to go with me. Arya and Xiao Bai's eyes instantly lit up when they heard this. Now, they preferred to follow Yi Xian. Because Yi Xian liked to play. The green-clothed man glanced at Yi Xian, your real objective is the two of them, right? Yi Xian smiled embarrassedly, yes. The green-clothed man gazed at Arya, and she hurriedly said, I promise I won't cause trouble. Xiao Bai hurriedly nodded as well. The green-clothed man thought for a moment, and then he said, fine, both of you go play. Be careful. Yi Xian was slightly puzzled, is it very dangerous? The green-clothed man shook his head, it's not dangerous for me, but for you. He. Yi Xian was speechless. The green-clothed man continued, there's a lake in the deepest depths of the ruin, and there's a temple by the lake. You can go there. Yi Xian was slightly curious, what's there? The green-clothed man smiled, go see for yourself. As soon as he finished speaking, he stood up and gazed into the depths of the starry sky, I'm going to do something. We'll part ways once I return. Yi Xian was slightly curious, Father, you're invincible now. So, I'm very curious. What's your objective now? The green-clothed man roared with laughter, my objective is to find someone who can kill me. As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished. Yi Xian fell silent for a long time before he shook his head and sighed. Father is like that. Qing is like that too. Big brother is like that too. Yi Xian looked at himself. When would he be able to say such pretentious words? At this moment, Arya suddenly walked over, let's go play. Yi Xian smiled, let's go. As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared with Arya and Little White. Not long after Yi Xian, Arya, and Little White disappeared, the green-clothed man appeared in the sky. He looked at Yi Xian and the others in the distance, chuckled, and then disappeared. In front of the city gate, Yi Xian saw Amulian, and beside her was a man in a luxurious robe. Seeing Yi Xian, the man in luxurious robe smiled, Brother Yi, I'm Li Tianhua from Sky Sect. Yi Xian cupped his fists, Brother Yi. At this moment, Amulian said, Young Master Li will go with us. He's very good at formations and barriers. With his help, it will be much more convenient for us. With his help, it will be much more convenient for us. Yi Xian nodded, okay. Amulian nodded, and the group rose into the sky, heading straight for the ancient ruins. On the way, Amulian said, the ancient ruins are divided into 3 areas, the first is the outer area, the second is the inner area, and the last is the core area. Among them, the inner area and the core area are the most dangerous. Yi Xian suddenly asked, Miss Amulian, what danger are you talking about? Amulian said, formations and barriers. There are also some unknown living beings. Yi Xian frowned, unknown living beings? Amulian nodded, some mysterious unknown living beings. Even the heaven-splitting clan doesn't know what they are. Yi Xian asked again, they can't come out? Amulian said, I don't know, but they've never come out. As for whether they can't come out or not, I don't know. Yi Xian said softly, that's interesting. Amulian glanced at Yi Xian, don't be careless. Yi Xian nodded, of course. Although he could tell them his father's name, his father wasn't very reliable. If his father's name didn't work, wouldn't it be a pain in the ass? He still had to rely on himself. Li Tianhua suddenly said, Brother Yi, is the little guy next to you the spirit ancestor? Yi Xian nodded, yes. Li Tianhua glanced at Little White and sighed in his heart. When Xian from the Wen clan is really retarded. Rob the spirit ancestor? It's not that you can't rob him, but you have to figure out the situation first. Worldly bandits would wait and find out the situation before robbing, but when Xian took action before figuring out the other party's strength and background. Not only did she bring disaster to herself, but she also brought disaster to her family. Greed. Since the incident with Wen Xian, the Sky Sect had called back all the disciples who were outside to educate them. It's not scary to get into trouble, but it's scary to provoke the wrong people. Even the Sky Sect was afraid. That man in cyan had even killed the master of the Wen clan. The Sky Sect couldn't afford to offend him. Amulian also glanced at Little White. She had to admit that this little guy was really cute. Actually, she didn't want Yi Xian to bring Little White here. Although this little guy was very powerful, it wasn't very strong. If Yi Xian brought it along, it would be too easy to attract hatred. However, seeing that Arya had also come, she didn't say anything. About an hour later, they came to a mountain range. At first glance, there were endless mountains, and it was very gloomy, like a ghost town. Amulian said softly, this is the ancient relic. Yi Xian suddenly turned to look at Arya and Little White, have you been here before? Arya shook her head, no. Yi Xian was a bit confused, haven't you been with Dad? Arya curled her lips, sometimes he doesn't even take us to play. Little White nodded fiercely, waving its little claws, seemingly a bit dissatisfied. Yi Xian glanced at Arya and Little White. Needless to say, his dad must have a headache with these two little guys. Yi Xian collected his thoughts, looked at the unknown mountain range, and said softly, let's go. After a while, the group disappeared into the distance. At this moment, a black crow suddenly flew over everyone's heads. No one paid any attention to it. The crow's speed was extremely fast, and in a short while, it flew into the depths of the mountain range. As it flew, it screeched. "That man is here again. That man is here again. If there's a grudge, an eye for an eye. P.S. I've been training recently. Being handsome is not as good as writing. As long as you're handsome, really, you can have anything. To be honest, I want to find another way to make a living. It's such a waste to write with my looks. Trust me, it won't be long before I treat the monthly votes as dirt." End of this chapter. Chapter 1670. Once they entered the mountain range, the light dimmed. Depressing. This was what Yi Xian and the others felt at that moment. Yi Xian looked around. This place had some tricks up its sleeve. Yi Xian did not dare to be careless in such a mysterious and unknown place. It was better to be safe than sorry. At that moment, Mulyan suddenly looked up. It was almost nightfall. Mulyan's face darkened. "We must reach a boundary that the sky-opening clan created before nightfall. Otherwise, we will be in danger tonight." Yi Xian looked at Mulyan. "What's happening at night?" Mulyan glanced at Yi Xian. "It's dangerous." Yi Xian asked, "Can't we fly?" Mulyan shook her head. "If we fly, there will be too much commotion and it will be even more dangerous." Yi Xian nodded. "Then let's hurry up." Although he was very powerful now, he was not invincible. They still had to be careful and could not be careless. Everyone quickened their pace. Along the way, Arya and Little White were very quiet. They were abnormally quiet. Yi Xian had been paying attention to the two little fellows. Little White would glance around from time to time, looking a little sneaky. Yi Xian was a little amused. He gently rubbed Little White's little head. "What are you up to?" Little White blinked and looked at Arya. Obviously, she did not know whether she should say it or not. Arya licked her candied paws and said casually, "We are looking for treasures." Yi Xian hurriedly asked, "Have you found them?" Arya shook her head. "There are no valuable treasures for now." Yi Xian was suddenly curious. "Arya, why are you looking for so many treasures?" Arya said, "To store them." Yi Xian continued to ask, "Just to store them?" Arya said, "Not really. We use them sometimes." Yi Xian looked at the storage ring on Little White's finger. Actually, he was very curious about the treasures in this little fellow's storage ring. There must be a lot of superb divine items. However, he did not fool Little White. He still had a bottom line. If there was a need, he could ask Little White for it. However, if he were to bluff it, that would be too much. As the sky darkened, the group quickened their pace. Yi Xian looked around. He also felt danger, unknown danger. He seemed to have thought of something and looked at Arya. Arya and Little White were very calm. Yi Xian was about to speak when Mulyan suddenly said, "Wait." With that, she stopped. Yi Xian looked at Mulyan, but Mulyan turned her head to look. Yi Xian also turned his head to look. In the distance, there was only a forest. Other than that, there was nothing else. Mulyan's expression grew more and more solemn. Yi Xian asked solemnly, "What did you see?" Mulyan looked into the distance and said nothing. However, the look in her eyes became more and more solemn and a little nervous. Yi Xian looked at Arya. "Can you see it?" Arya turned her head and took a look. She was a little confused. "Can't you see?" Yi Xian was speechless. At the side, Li Tianhua's expression was a little ugly. Obviously, only he and Yi Xian could not see it. Yi Xian said solemnly, "What's over there?" Arya thought about it and said, "A red-haired woman in white. She's looking at you." Yi Xian was speechless. At this moment, Arya said again, "Let's go." Mulyan withdrew her gaze as well. Yi Xian looked at Mulyan. Mulyan said solemnly, "Let's go." With that, she walked directly into the distance. Along the way, Mulyan's expression was extremely solemn and she did not speak. Arya and Little White were still so calm. Yi Xian walked to Mulyan's side. "Miss Mulyan, aren't you going to tell us?" Mulyan said, "Red Lady." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Red Lady?" Mulyan nodded. "I don't know who she is either. I only know that everyone who has seen her is dead. The Heaven-Splitting clan has always been fearful of her. If we encounter her when we search for treasures, we must retreat immediately and not stay." Yi Xian said solemnly, "It's that strange?" Mulyan said, "Her target is you." Yi Xian was astonished. "Why?" Mulyan shook her head. "I don't know." Yi Xian was about to speak when Mulyan said, "We're here." Yi Xian looked up. There was a stone house nearby, and the stone house was covered in red talismans. Mulyan walked over to one of the talismans and silently chanted. The talismans before her gradually started to tremble. In next to no time, the talismans parted to the sides and opened up a path. Mulyan said, "Let's go." With that, she led Yi Xian and the others into the small wooden house. The small wooden house was covered in strange talismans as well. Meanwhile, the sky had turned completely dark. Roar! A sharp roar of a beast suddenly sounded from outside. Yi Xian looked outside. "What's that?" Mulyan shook her head. "I don't know." Yi Xian glanced at Arya. "Do you feel any danger?" Arya shook her head. "No." Yi Xian was relieved. As a demonic beast, Arya must be extremely sensitive to danger. If there was any danger, she would know immediately. However, he did not know that Arya's danger was completely different from what he had imagined. What was Arya's danger? It was an expert at the level of the woman in a plain dress. That was dangerous. At this moment, the mountains outside suddenly shook, as if some demonic beast was running amok. Mulyan suddenly looked out of the window. She stared fixedly outside. "She's here again." Yi Xian looked out of the window. There was nothing there. Mulyan said, "She must be here for you." Yi Xian suddenly opened the door and walked outside. He looked into the distance. "If you have something to say, just say it. Don't try to scare me." At this moment, a chilly wind blew and a woman appeared in front of Yi Xian. She had red hair and a white dress. It had to be said that the woman was very beautiful. Her looks were not inferior to Mulyan's, but her outfit was a little creepy, especially on a dark night like this. The woman looked at Yi Xian. "You're his son." Hearing this, Yi Xian's heart skipped a beat. This woman knew his father. At this moment, the woman suddenly said, "It's true." Yi Xian glanced at the woman. "Senior, do you have something to say?" The woman suddenly attacked. Before Yi Xian could react, he was punched in the throat. Boom! Yi Xian's body trembled violently. Just as Yi Xian was about to counterattack, the woman had already appeared hundreds of feet away. She had distanced herself from him. Yi Xian was a little dumbfounded. Is there enmity between her and my father? The woman stared fixedly at Yi Xian with eyes filled with resentment. A person who goes back on his word deserves death. As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly pressed her palm down. Bang! Yi Xian's expression changed drastically. He charged forward and smashed his fist forward. Bang! Yi Xian's right arm shook violently. His body trembled as he retreated repeatedly. Meanwhile, his vision went black, and then a hand grabbed his throat. Yi Xian didn't hesitate at all. He turned around and smashed his fist towards the woman's chest. However, the woman suddenly smashed his throat against the ground. Bang! The entire ground exploded apart. The woman was about to attack again. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly held the woman in his arms and rolled towards the ground. Rumble! The ground transformed into an enormous abyss, and then Yi Xian was blasted flying. After Yi Xian stopped, a wisp of blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. In the distance, the woman looked coldly at Yi Xian. She slowly clenched her right hand and was about to make a move. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Wait." The woman looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said solemnly, "You said you go back on your word. Did my father promise you something?" The woman said ferociously, "He promised me to take me out, but he didn't do it. Get out." Yi Xian was stunned, and then he turned to look at Arya. Arya blinked, "I don't know." Yi Xian's face was full of black lines. "My father is too much. He didn't do what he promised others. Now this is great. I'll take the blame." Yi Xian looked at the woman, "I'll take responsibility for my own actions. You should look for my father." The woman said angrily, "A son pays his father's debts. Do you have a problem with that?" The corner of Yi Xian's mouth twitched slightly. At this moment, Mulyan suddenly said, "Miss, his father is not an ordinary person. Since he promised you something, he shouldn't go back on his word. There must be something hidden. What do you think?" The woman was silent. Mulyan continued, "Such a strong person can't be a man who goes back on his word." The woman glanced at Mulyan, "Where is he now?" Mulyan said, "Outside." The woman looked at Yi Xian, "He let you in?" Yi Xian nodded. The woman asked again, "He let you come alone?" Arya was suddenly a little dissatisfied. "Hey, can you not ignore us? Aren't we humans?" The woman glanced at Arya, "Are you a human?" Arya blinked, "You're too careless." As she spoke, she continued to lick the candied fruit. The woman looked at Yi Xian and sneered, "He's really powerful. He really dared to let you come alone." Yi Xian frowned, "What do you mean?" The woman was expressionless, "What do I mean? Don't you know what he did here back then?" A bad feeling arose in Yi Xian's heart. What did he do? The woman said, "He robbed everywhere and took away all the treasures of others." Hearing this, Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. "Are you telling the truth?" The woman said indifferently, "Why would I lie to you? After he came in, he made this place restless and challenged people everywhere. After beating them, he even said, 'It's lonely being invincible.' Not only did he abuse them physically, he also trampled on them spiritually." Yi Xian, the woman said again, "When he left, he said he would come back and continue to challenge them. The people here have been cultivating crazily all these years, waiting for him to come back. But I didn't expect that he didn't come back, but you came instead." Yi Xian's expression was a little ugly. "When I came in, he told me to say his name when I came in, and then I could do whatever I wanted in here." The woman glanced at Yi Xian, "Let me ask you a question, I hope you don't mind." Yi Xian said, "What?" The woman said, "Are you sure you're his biological daughter?" Yi Xian. Chapter 1671. Needless to say, Yi Xian was a little annoyed at this moment. Damn it! This is a trap. This old man was trying to dig a pit for him to die. Yi Xian glanced into the distance and was ready to slip away. At this moment, the woman suddenly said, "Want to leave?" "It's too late." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "What do you mean?" The woman said indifferently, "The people here knew you just came in. Now, you can't leave." Yi Xian, the woman glanced at Yi Xian, "Did he really let you in?" Yi Xian said, I wanted to come in myself, but he asked me to tell him his name. The woman shook her head, you're definitely not his biological son. Yi Xian, at this moment, the distant sky suddenly trembled violently, and then a burly man broke through the sky. The next moment, the burly man appeared in front of Yi Xian. The burly man looked at Yi Xian with an icy cold expression, where's your father? Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then said, he's outside. The burly man roared angrily, let him in. Yi Xian glanced at the burly man, actually, I don't like him. But let's be frank. If he comes in, can you defeat him? The burly man pointed at Yi Xian angrily, how dare you look down on me? As soon as he finished speaking, he took a step forward and blasted a punch at Yi Xian. Pure physical strength. Under the punch, the space in the field distorted. The dimension of time was distorted as well. Yi Xian's expression changed drastically. He didn't use the sword drawing technique, but rushed forward and blasted a punch. Head on. In terms of physical strength, he really wasn't afraid of anyone. Except for Arya. Going head-on with Arya was purely courting death. Bang! Their fists collided, and the surrounding space shattered. Both of them were in a pitch-black dimension. At the same time, Yi Xian retreated nearly 1,000 feet. Yi Xian looked at his slightly numb right hand and his face darkened. In terms of physical strength, he was still somewhat inferior to this burly man. However, this was normal. The person in front of him was a genuine concept powerhouse. However, it gave him a strange feeling. Very strange. The other had a physical body. In other words, it wasn't a soul, but a living concept powerhouse. However, he just felt that it was a bit strange, an indescribably strange feeling. In the distance, the burly man coldly looked at Yi Xian. He didn't come himself and let his son come. What a coward. Yi Xian glanced at the burly man, if you put it that way, I won't be happy. My father didn't come because he was a coward. He didn't want to bully you. The burly man smiled disdainfully, bully me? If not for the fact that my main body has already perished, why would I be afraid of him? His main body perished? Yi Xian frowned slightly. Didn't this guy in front of him have a main body? In the distance, the woman in the white dress glanced at Yi Xian, you don't seem to understand anything. Yi Xian, at this moment, the burly man suddenly said, fine, you can come. As soon as he said that, he directly blasted a punch at Yi Xian. It was a very simple punch. Simple but violent. That punch seemed to be able to crush heaven and earth. A true concept powerhouse. Yi Xian took a deep breath, and his eyes were filled with fighting spirit. Although he had fought with a concept powerhouse in the Heaven Battling clan, that concept powerhouse couldn't be considered a true concept powerhouse. After all, it was just an image. But the person in front of him was a true concept powerhouse. Yi Xian didn't waste any time and directly rushed out. He directly fought head-on. Yi Xian blasted a punch at the burly man. The burly man didn't dodge. Bang! As soon as their fists collided, both of them instantly retreated explosively. Yi Xian directly retreated 3 kilometers, and the burly man retreated 300 m. The burly man glanced at his fist, and a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. He hadn't expected that the guy in front of him would actually be so strong. In the distance, Yi Xian wiped the blood from the corners of his mouth, and he grinned as he charged out again. Fight. Now, he liked this kind of fist-to-flesh battle. This kind of battle was both carefree and could improve. Thus, he didn't choose to ask Arya for help. After a short while, the burly man's eyes narrowed slightly after he blasted Yi Xian flying with a punch. You're using me to practice. Practice. Yi Xian grinned. Yes. The burly man's expression turned savage. You're courting death. As soon as he spoke, he suddenly leaped up and smashed his fist down towards Yi Xian. An extremely powerful force was contained in his palm. At the instant his fist descended, the mountains trembled like an earthquake had occurred. It was extremely shocking. Yi Xian's expression was calm as he suddenly closed his eyes. Bang! In an instant, the burly man was blasted flying. Everyone here was stunned when they witnessed this scene. What's going on? Mulian glanced at Yi Xian, and there was a trace of surprise in her eyes. She naturally knew what was going on. It was Yi Xian's soul attack. She had no doubt that he definitely learned it from that place of cultivation. The burly man's countenance was extremely pale, and there was a trace of fear in his eyes as he gazed at Yi Xian. An attack on the soul. It directly disregarded his body and struck directly at his soul. That attack from Yi Xian just now had almost obliterated his soul. Yi Xian grinned as he gazed at the burly man, and then he took a step forward. The burly man raised his head, glanced at him, and said, "It's late now. Let's fight another day." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and vanished on the spot. Yi Xian was stunned when he witnessed this scene. Damn it! He fled just like that? Let's fight another day. How could he be so shameless? Yi Xian was speechless to the extreme. Actually, he'd really wanted to test his soul attack. Unfortunately, the burly man was clearly very weak when it came to the soul, and he'd actually fled. However, this caused Chen Shi to feel slightly fearful once more. Fortunately, he'd strengthened his soul at that place. Otherwise, if he encountered a soul expert, then he might not even have the ability to fight back. No matter how strong one's body was, it was like paper when it came to the soul. As if he'd thought of something, Yi Xian suddenly turned around to look at Arya. "Arya, can you resist an attack from my soul?" Arya blinked. "Give it a try." Yi Xian nodded. "Be careful." As he spoke, he suddenly executed an attack from the soul. Bang! Waves of ripples suddenly arose in the space here, and it was like waves were surging through the air. However, Arya was completely fine. Yi Xian was slightly dazed. Arya licked the sugar-coated hawse. "Again?" Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Arya, why are you completely fine?" Arya said, "Because my soul is very powerful." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Very powerful?" Arya nodded. "Beast soul. Beast soul." Yi Xian understood. Generally, the soul of a demon beast was stronger than that of a human. As such a terrifying evil beast, how terrifying was Arya's soul? Not to mention him, even a true intent realm expert couldn't do anything to Arya. Withdrawing his thoughts, Yi Xian turned around and looked at the woman in white. The woman in white said lightly, "Do you think it's over?" Yi Xian laughed. "Do you think I'm afraid?" The woman in white looked at Yi Xian. "Remember what you said." After speaking, she turned around and left. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Miss." The woman in white turned around to look at Yi Xian. "What's the matter?" Yi Xian thought about it and said, "Perhaps I can help you get out." The woman in white sneered, raised her middle finger, and then turned around and left. Yi Xian's face darkened. This woman is so rude. Without thinking too much about it, Yi Xian turned around to look at Amu and Li Tianhua. "Miss Amu, Brother Li, both of you leave first." Based on the current situation, these two would definitely be unlucky if they followed him. Amu shook her head. "It's fine." Li Tianhua smiled as well. "Since you came together, then let's leave together." He actually wanted to leave. But on second thought, although he could withdraw safely if he left now, wouldn't it be equivalent to losing a chance to befriend Yi Xian? If he could befriend Yi Xian, then it would absolutely be a great thing for him and the entire Sky sect. He didn't have a chance before, but now. Once they went through thick and thin together, then they could be said to be friends, and as long as they were friends, then there were limitless possibilities. Yi Xian smiled. We might be in danger from now on. Ah Mu shook her head. It's fine. Li Tianhua smiled as well. It's fine. Yi Xian nodded slightly. All right then. Let's continue forward. Li Tianhua was slightly curious. Aren't we turning back? Yi Xian shook his head. It's too late now. Since they've already discovered me, they definitely won't let me go back. Since that's the case, why don't we continue forward? Li Tianhua nodded and said softly, that's true. Yi Xian looked into the distance. Then let's go. Soon, the group continued forward. Yi Xian naturally didn't panic. With his current strength, he was actually not a weakling. Moreover, there was Arya here. What kind of person was Arya? She was a fellow who was afraid of his father and Qing. He even felt that in this world, besides Qing, his father, and his big brother, no one could kill Arya. When one's physical body reached a certain level, it was truly abnormal. Especially when Arya was a beast soul, an extremely powerful soul. It could be said that she was a little undefeatable. The group continued forward. Yi Xian's goal was the temple by the lake deep in the mountain range. The temple. Since his father had sent him to this place, there must be a deeper meaning. It couldn't be purely to trick him, right? If it was, he would definitely ask Qing, to come back and beat that man up. If he couldn't beat him, then he would ask his big brother to come along. At this moment, Ah Mu suddenly said, why did they dare to come to faction leader Yang? Hearing this, Yi Xian was stunned. Right. Why did that burly man dare to come to his father? At this moment, Ah Mu said again, if I'm not wrong, faction leader Yang must have hidden his strength. Yi Xian nodded. His father must have hidden his strength. Otherwise, that burly man wouldn't have the guts to come to his father. But why did his father hide his strength? Could it be to trick him? Thinking of this, Yi Xian's face immediately darkened. Damn it! This is really possible. This cheap father of mine is definitely capable of doing such a thing. Yi Xian looked into the distance and said softly, Father, if you trick me again, I'll put righteousness before family. Don't blame me for being unfilial. It's not like I can't do something like killing my father. P.S. The weather is getting cold. Everyone remember to vote a few more months. Chapter 1672. A lake. That was Yi Xian's current goal. In his opinion, although his father liked to trick him, he would not do it to his death. The night was dark, but it did not affect them at all given their abilities. However, the expressions of the few of them were somewhat solemn. Because up until now, there was not a single sound in the surroundings. It was too quiet. This was not normal. Yi Xian looked around but could not sense anything. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian looked at Ah Mulyan. Miss Ah Mulyan, what kind of place is this? Ah Mulyan shook her head. I don't know. Yi Xian said, you don't know anything at all? Ah Mulyan nodded. When the heaven-splitting clan's ancestor discovered this place, he immediately decided not to advance any further. There are very few records about this place. However, the ancestor instructed us not to go deeper. Not to go deeper. Yi Xian's expression darkened. But his father wanted him to go deeper. Was this a trap? Yi Xian looked into the distance and felt a headache coming on. He was a little afraid of his father now. He was really awesome when it came to tricking his son. At this moment, Mulyan glanced at Yi Xian. Senior Yang wants you to go deeper? Yi Xian nodded. Mulyan said, then let's go deeper. Yi Xian smiled. Miss Mulyan, aren't you afraid? Mulyan said softly, I'm curious, so I want to take a look. Yi Xian looked at Li Tianhua. Brotherly, what about you? Li Tianhua smiled. Fortune comes from danger. Yi Xian nodded. Let's go then. As he spoke, he glanced at the calm area and Little White. With area around, he felt more at ease. His father might trick him, but he probably would not trick Area and Little White. However, he still had to be careful. Just because Area was not afraid of something did not mean he was not. At this moment, footsteps were heard from afar. Hearing this, Yi Xian and the others immediately stopped in their tracks. Yi Xian looked into the darkness in the distance, and soon, an old man walked out. After the old man came out, he first looked at Area and Little White. The old man narrowed his eyes when he saw Whitey. Spirit Ancestor. Xiao Bai licked the candied fruit and waved her little claws. Obviously, she thought this old man was greeting her. The elder looked at Whitey. Interesting. A spirit ancestor actually appeared. Little White nodded and waved its paw again. Area suddenly said, Little Bai, she is not greeting you. Maybe she wants to steal your Tanghulu. Xiao Bai's expression changed drastically when she heard this. She glared at the old man and hid the candied fruit. At this moment, the old man looked at Area, and a trace of seriousness appeared in his eyes. Demonic beast. Area licked the Tanghulu. Do you have a problem? The old man smiled, and then he looked at Yi Xian. Don't say that we're bullying you. I'll give you a chance now. Call your father over. Our enmity with him has nothing to do with you. Yi Xian shook his head. I can't. The old man gazed at Yi Xian. So you're saying that you're prepared to shoulder it for him? Yi Xian was speechless. I'll shoulder it my ass. He was about to speak when the old man suddenly said, Then don't blame us for bullying you. Yi Xian's expression instantly changed when the old man finished speaking. In the next moment, he suddenly raised his right arm to block. Bang! An explosion resounded, and then Yi Xian retreated explosively by over 1 kilometer. When he stopped, a black-clothed man was standing not too far away from him. The black-clothed man glanced coldly at Yi Xian, and then he clenched his right hand towards Yi Xian from afar. Bang! In an instant, the space where Yi Xian resided warped. Meanwhile, Yi Xian closed his eyes slowly. Bang! The black-clothed man's expression changed drastically, and then his figure was blasted flying. A soul attack. After the black-clothed old man was blasted flying, the old man glanced at Yi Xian. A soul technique. Yi Xian gazed at the old man. Meanwhile, the old man suddenly gazed at the black-clothed man. The black-clothed man's countenance was extremely pale. Obviously, his soul had suffered a heavy injury just now. The black-clothed man gazed at Yi Xian with a trace of fear in his eyes. Obviously, he was afraid of Yi Xian's soul attack as well. The old man spoke abruptly, You attack, and I'll stop his soul technique for you. The black-clothed man nodded. He was just about to attack when Yi Xian spoke abruptly, Geezer, are you going to gang up on me? The old man laughed coldly, So what if I am? Yi Xian suddenly looked at Area, hit him. Area didn't waste her breath. She charged forward and blasted her fist towards the old man. The old man's pupils constricted abruptly. He didn't have time to dodge at such a close distance, so he blasted his fist towards Area's fist. Bang! As soon as their fists collided, the old man was blasted flying, and he flew to the ends of the horizon. He was nowhere to be seen. The black-clothed man was stunned when he saw this scene. He was blasted flying with a single punch. The black-clothed man turned to look at Arya, and there wasn't just fear in his eyes, there was even a trace of fear. He was very clear about the old man's strength, yet he was blasted flying by a single punch from this little girl. Arya looked at the black-clothed man and licked her candied fruit. You want to hit him as well? Obviously, she was asking Yi Xian. Yi Xian was about to speak when the black-clothed man turned around and ran. He was extremely swift, and he vanished in the blink of an eye. Yi Xian was a little speechless. Damn, this guy can run so fast. Aren't the people here all dead? Yi Xian looked up into the distance. It was pitch black, but he could feel many extremely obscure auras. Obviously, there were experts spying on them in the dark. Yi Xian shook his head and sighed. Why did he have to pay for his father's sins? If that temple didn't have any supreme-grade divine items, he would definitely put justice before family. After a while, the group continued forward. Along the way, Li Tianhua sized up Arya from time to time. He realized that he had underestimated this little girl's strength. Mulyan also glanced at Arya. She knew that Arya was very strong, but she didn't know that Arya was this strong. At this moment, Arya suddenly stopped. Yi Xian asked, "What's wrong?" Arya looked at Little White, and Little White pointed to the right with its little paw. Yi Xian blinked. Is there a treasure? Little White nodded vigorously. There was a treasure. Arya looked at Yi Xian. Let's go take a look. Yi Xian thought about it. Let's go take a look then. Arya waved her little hand. Let's go. Just like that, the group walked to the right. It was still very quiet along the way. Yi Xian walked to Arya's side and said, "Arya, is there anything that makes you feel dangerous?" Arya shook her head, "Not yet." Yi Xian nodded. "If you feel that there's danger, you must say it early, understand?" Arya nodded, "I understand." Yi Xian nodded slightly, feeling a little relieved. Arya should be reliable. After walking for a short while, Little White suddenly raised its little paw. Arya immediately stopped and looked at Little White. "Did you find something?" Little White nodded. Arya remained calm. "What is it?" Little White thought about it, then gestured with its little paw. Yi Xian looked at Arya. "What did she say?" Arya shook her head. "I don't understand." Yi Xian, Little White blinked, then waved its little paw again. Arya was a little helpless. "Little White, can't you learn to speak human language? I almost don't understand your beast language." Little White, at this moment, there was a sudden movement in the distance. Yi Xian and the others quickly looked over. Not far away, a white fox walked out. The white fox had 9 tails and was snow white all over. It was very beautiful. Seeing the white fox, Little White was a little excited. She pointed at the white fox and waved her little paw. Obviously, the treasure she was talking about was this white fox. At this moment, the white fox was also looking at Little White, her eyes full of curiosity. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Do you want to play with us?" Mulyan glanced at Yi Xian, stunned. So direct? The white fox suddenly looked at Yi Xian, and when she saw Yi Xian, her gaze turned cold. Her gaze was unfriendly. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian was speechless. His father couldn't have bullied this white fox, right? That didn't make sense. His father didn't seem like the kind of person who liked to bully the weak. At this moment, Arya suddenly said, "Are you willing to go with us?" Since it was a living creature, they couldn't use force. Moreover, this white fox was a demon beast. The white fox looked at Arya, and Arya licked the candied fruit. "Eat well, drink well, and play well." Little White quickly nodded. She waved her little paw, and a cloud of purple gas floated towards the white fox. When the cloud of purple gas floated in front of the white fox's eyes were instantly filled with excitement. She sniffed and absorbed all the purple gas. After that, the white fox looked at Little White. Little White grinned and waved with her little paw. The white fox was a little hesitant. At this moment, Arya suddenly said, "Let's go." Little White turned to look at Arya, and Arya nodded, "Let's go." With that, she turned and left with Little White, who still wanted to express something. Yi Xian and the others immediately turned around. They naturally understood what Arya meant. She was loosening the reins only to grasp better. Sure enough, at this moment, the white fox suddenly appeared in front of everyone without a sound. The white fox glanced at Little White. "I'll go with you." Little White grinned, and was rather excited. Arya suddenly said, "Do you have any special abilities?" Obviously, Arya was still rather rational. The white fox said, "Charm." Arya blinked. "Charm?" The white fox said, "I can charm people's hearts." Arya thought for a moment, and then pointed at Yi Xian, "You try, little Schwanzi." Yi Xian was speechless. The white fox glanced at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian said, "You know my father?" The white fox's expression was rather cold. "He came here back then?" Yi Xian asked, "And then?" The white fox said, "He promised me that he would take me out, but then he disappeared." Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "Why did he agree to take you out?" The white fox shook his head. "There was no reason. He came to find me and asked if I wanted to go out. He said that he would bring me out." Yi Xian frowned. At this time, the white fox said, "As far as I know, he didn't just say this to me. He said this to almost all the people, spirits, and demon beasts here. However, he didn't bring any of them out. That big liar." Yi Xian was speechless. Chapter 1673. Hearing the white fox's words, Yi Xian was momentarily speechless. What did his father mean by this? He had promised so many people, yet he did not fulfill his promise. And he had even asked him to come in. At this thought, Yi Xian was suddenly dumbfounded. Could it be that his father had asked him to save these people? Yi Xian fell into deep thought. That was entirely possible. Although his father liked to trick him, he would not do something so senseless. He had asked him to come in, but he had asked him to tell him his name. Although it was somewhat of a trick, it was definitely not as simple as that. If he could save these people, it would definitely be a great help to him. After all, most of the people here were intent experts. However, these intent experts were a little strange. He had a feeling that the intent realm experts here were not true intent realm experts. They felt different from the figure he had trained within the heaven-splitting clan. False intent realm? Yi Xian shook his head. Regardless of whether they were intent experts or not, these people's strength was unquestionable. If they could follow him, they would have a higher chance of winning against the alien dimension race. At this thought, Yi Xian looked at the white fox. To be honest, I have come to save everyone. Mulyan glanced at Yi Xian, a trace of doubt in her eyes. The white fox looked at Yi Xian. Save us? Yi Xian nodded and said seriously, yes. My father asked me to fulfill the promise he made to everyone back then. The white fox asked, why didn't he come himself? Yi Xian said with a smile, because he has something important to do. The white fox continued to ask, what is it? Yi Xian looked at the white fox. Sir, why did my father promise to save you? Did you help him, or did he owe you? The white fox fell silent for a moment before shaking his head. Neither. He said it himself. Yi Xian smiled. Since you did not help him and he did not owe you anything, why do you need him to save you? The white fox looked at Yi Xian, he agreed to it himself. Yi Xian continued to ask, he promised to save you. Did he give an exact time? The white fox frowned. Yi Xian smiled and said, looks like there's none left. The white fox glanced at Yi Xian. What are you trying to say? Yi Xian asked, Sir, in my opinion, he doesn't owe you anything. Since he doesn't owe you anything, why should you ask him to save you? He did promise you, but aren't I here to save you now? The white fox shook his head, you are too weak. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. You're still disdainful. If I were my dad, I definitely wouldn't have saved you. The white fox narrowed its eyes. What do you mean? Yi Xian smiled and said, he did promise to save you, but why do you think he must save you? Does he owe you? The white fox was silent. Yi Xian said again, you can only get what you give. What have you given? The white fox glanced at Yi Xian. What do you want? Yi Xian sneered. I don't want anything. You continue to wait here. After that, he looked at Arya and Little White. Let's go. Arya nodded. All right. The group turned and left. Yi Xian was a little angry. He didn't know what happened between his dad and these people, but these people's attitude made him very unhappy. These people took others' help as a matter of course. It was probably because of this that his dad chose to leave back then. I can help you, but you can't take this help for granted. After all, no one owes anyone anything. And his dad asked him to come in and report his name. It was probably to let him settle the karma of the past. But now it seemed that the karma of the past had gradually become the cause of evil. Yi Xian was really angry. Father was really something, throwing such a terrible mess to him. At this moment, the white fox suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian and the others. The white fox looked at Little White. I'll follow her. Yi Xian smiled. Why should I let you follow her? The white fox glanced at Yi Xian. I'm a spirit fox. If I follow her, she will benefit too. Hearing that, Little White blinked. She looked at Arya and was a little puzzled. What benefits do I get? Yi Xian looked at Arya. What benefits does Little White get? Arya glanced at the white fox. I'm also very curious about what benefits do you get from following my white. The white fox's eyes gradually turned cold. Arya looked calm. Do you want to fight? At this moment, Little White grabbed Arya's hand and shook her head. Little White had always been kind to the spirits of heaven and earth. The main reason she came to find the white fox was to bring it along, not to enslave it. She could help this white fox improve. But now, she didn't like this white fox a little. There were two reasons. First, there was a problem with the white fox's attitude toward her master. Second, there was a problem with the white fox's attitude toward her. Arya shrugged. All right. I'm not angry. Little Schwanzi, let's go. Yi Xian nodded. The group continued forward. The white fox glanced at Arya and the others, her eyes gradually turning cold. At this moment, Arya, who was far away, suddenly stopped in her tracks. She turned to look at the white fox. Are you provoking me? Obviously, she felt the white fox's malice. The white fox glanced coldly at Arya and Yi Xian. You will regret this. With that, she turned and left. Arya slowly clenched her right hand. At this moment, Yi Xian had already rushed out. Without any nonsense, he directly used 100 sword-drawing techniques. The moment Yi Xian drew his sword, a sword cry suddenly soared into the sky, shaking the mountains. Seeing Yi Xian's sudden move, the white fox's expression changed drastically. She suddenly turned around and slammed her right hand forward. In an instant, 9 foxtails soared into the sky from behind her. At this moment, Yi Xian's sword fell. Boom! The 9 fox tails instantly exploded, and the white fox directly retreated thousands of feet away. And the space she passed through was directly annihilated inch by inch. Seeing Yi Xian's sword, Mulyan and Li Tianhua's expressions changed. Especially Li Tianhua. The strength of Yi Xian's sword was not something a peri-celestial expert should have. Was this guy really just a peri-celestial expert? In the distance, Yi Xian held his sword and walked toward the white fox. You said I'll regret it. Tell me why I'll regret it. The white fox stared at Yi Xian, her eyes filled with fear. Although Yi Xian's sword did not directly kill her, it severely injured her. Yi Xian's expression was rather ferocious. I didn't let you follow, and you still want to take revenge? Do you fucking think I'm air? As soon as he finished speaking, he charged out. The white fox's expression changed drastically. She turned around and transformed into a white light that vanished into the distance. She fled. Obviously, she wasn't confident in her ability to withstand Yi Xian's second sword strike. After Yi Xian slashed empty air, he was about to chase after her when Arya suddenly said, "Little Xuanzi, forget it." Yi Xian looked at Arya, and she shook her head. Little Bai said to ignore her. If she comes looking for trouble again, Little Bai will deal with her. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he turned to look at the surroundings. He said fiercely, "Let's try again." As he spoke, he looked at Arya. "Let's go." The group continued on their way. Along the way, Yi Xian's expression was icy cold, and his right hand held the sheathed sword tightly. This sword belonged to the green-clothed man. Arya glanced at Yi Xian and said, "Little Xuanzi, don't be angry." Yi Xian said softly, "I'm not angry anymore." As he spoke, he looked into the distance and said, "Let's fly." Flying with air. Mulyan looked at Yi Xian and asked, "Are you sure?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "In any case, they won't stop even if we walk slowly, right?" Mulyan nodded. "That's true." Yi Xian rose into the air on his sword and looked down. It didn't take long for him to find the lake that his father had mentioned, and there was an ancient temple by the side of the lake. It was obvious that this was the temple. Meanwhile, Mulyan appeared by his side, and she looked at the temple. "This is your objective?" Yi Xian nodded. Mulyan glanced at the surroundings of the temple. It was extremely empty, and the nearest mountain to the temple was a few kilometers away. Moreover, there was a statue in front of the temple. Yi Xian said abruptly, "Let's go." Mulyan nodded. All of them were about to continue forward and a furious shout suddenly resounded from the mountains below. How audacious! How dare they be so brazen! Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly charged down. In the next moment, a sword howl suddenly resounded from within the mountain range. In an instant, a bloody head suddenly shot into the sky, and then it shot straight into the clouds before slowly falling back down. Meanwhile, Yi Xian had returned to Mulyan's side, and the sword in his hand was still dripping with blood. Yi Xian said, "Let's continue forward." All of them continued forward. This time, it was much quieter. It didn't take long for Yi Xian and the others to arrive at the side of the lake, and they just landed when the lake suddenly boiled. Yi Xian turned around to look at the lake, and a figure suddenly appeared within it. "Stop moving forward." Yi Xian looked at the figure. "Why?" The figure said, "That's a restricted area." "A restricted area." Yi Xian turned around to glance at the temple, and then he said, "Is it very dangerous?" The figure said, "Look at me." Yi Xian looked at the figure, and the figure said, "I was imprisoned here." Yi Xian asked, "What's in there?" The figure said, "I don't know." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "You don't know?" The figure said, "Your father should know." Yi Xian asked, you know my father? The figure said, he came here all those years ago, and then he went in. Yi Xian turned around to glance at the temple, and he was slightly curious. What exactly is in there? Meanwhile, the figure suddenly said, young friend, can you get me out of here? Yi Xian looked at the figure, and the figure said, if you're willing to help, then I'm willing to follow you and serve you faithfully. I swear on my soul that if I break my oath, then I'll surely die a horrible death. As the figure swore, ripples suddenly arose on the surface of the lake. Obviously, an oath was a cause and effect. Yi Xian looked at the figure, how do I save you? The figure said, it's very simple, just ask the little girl beside you to do it. Area. Yi Xian looked at Area, and she said, ask Little White to do it. Little White grinned, and then she looked at the figure below and sniffed lightly. In an instant, countless strands of spiritual energy surged towards Little White. In next to no time, something seemed to vanish from the surface of the lake. A moment later, a middle-aged man broke out of the water. After he emerged, the middle-aged man took a deep breath greedily, and then he looked at Yi Xian and bowed slightly, thank you for saving my life. Yi Xian smiled, I can't do anything to you if you leave now. The middle-aged man shook his head, a man keeps his word. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said, 3 years. You just have to follow me for 3 years. After 3 years, you can leave on your own. The middle-aged man immediately bowed slightly, thank you. Yi Xian turned around to look at the temple. Actually, he felt slightly guilty. Could it be that his father was really just trying to trick him? Right at this moment, the temple's door suddenly opened, and a voice suddenly sounded out from within, young master, I've been waiting for you for a long time. Young master. Yi Xian was stunned. He's calling me? Could this be an inheritance that Dad left behind for me? Yi Xian instantly became excited. No, it's an inheritance, Dad doesn't seem to be dead yet. P.S. I solemnly promise that I won't use a sword anymore. Even if I do use a sword, I'll use a proper sword and never go to a dark alley like that. Even if I go to a dark alley, it won't affect the update. Sigh. Once I enter a sword, I'll stop updating. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.